Welcome to a world where power and money can buy you anything.
But from the shadows emerges a nobody, one who shatters all expectations, dominating everyone in his path. Let's begin. At the heart of it all is Valhalla Academy, one of the top 3 hunter institutes in the world.
Every year, countless aspiring hunters clash, all vying for a coveted spot.
But with a brutal success rate of 1 in 500, few ever make it. And of those, only 150 will graduate. The difficulty is as unforgiving as reality itself, isn't it? On the very first day of class, the training grounds are already a battlefield where anything goes. Students with nothing but their bare hands face off against those wielding swords. Watching over this chaos is the senior combat instructor, Lee Sang-cheol. A moment later, a man named Yoo Min-jun arrives, here to observe a candidate from his family who commands everyone's respect. Her name is Yoo So-hyun, from the legendary Yusin family, one of Korea's 5 most prestigious houses. Her innate talent for mana and the sword is overwhelming. Anyone who dares to cross her path is swiftly defeated.
She's a true prodigy, yet she barely registers on the instructor's radar, until he learns her family has communicated with a Constellation Guardian.
Now, that gets his attention.
In this world, there are 5 chosen ones known as Constellation Guardians. It's common for hunters to receive their blessings, their protection, or even forge a contract for immense power.
Each of these 5 divine beings wields a different authority. The Yusin family is backed by the god of the sword, the Jang-san family, the god of spirits, the Jin Choi family, the god of martial arts, the Oyeon family, the god of fists, and the Jayan family, the god of the bow. Having communicated with a guardian, Yu Yin is a genius whose potential is truly limitless.
They say passing this academy's test will be a simple feat for her. This is so monumental. The entire world is watching through broadcast cameras.
The 17-year-old super talent's opponent is another 17-year-old, Kim Jua. The instructors are stunned by how utterly calm the boy is, knowing full well who he's up against, as she readies for an easy victory. The fight begins.
Our prodigy draws her blade, but her opponent has vanished. With no other choice, she decides to strike.
Her swordsmanship was breathtaking. Her control over mana, flawless. The attack was aimed for a perfect kill, but believe it or not, he neutralized her with a single punch to the chest, ending the fight instantly. Our protagonist, however, seemed almost bored by the outcome. And now, we witness the truth. We go back 300 years in the past. 3 centuries ago, the fate of the world was decided at the Tower of Destruction. 2 men were locked in a valiant struggle. The tower's master, the king of destruction, Brace, praised the great battle, leaving the martial leader, Kim Hyenino, severely weakened. Brace was an imposing figure, with strange blue glasses and a wild mane of white hair. Kim Hai agreed that the duel had been magnificent. A faint chuckle escaped the main character's lips. Kim Hyenino's senses went on high alert as a panel materialized before him. It declared the Tower of Destruction and its ruler, Brace, had been vanquished, and the world's annihilation had been averted. The colossal structure began to groan and crack, its foundation shattered. Kim Hae and Oh realized the terrible truth. The tower was collapsing upon him right after his victory. He groaned in agony, lamenting that this was supposed to be his chance to finally live in peace. Since childhood, he'd endured endless labor as a hunter just to survive. All the money, the fame, the life he had dreamed of, was turning to dust before his very eyes. He knew he should have brought his disciples. But then he remembered the overwhelming power of his foe. His entire squad would have been wiped out. Clutching his wound, he bids farewell to the world as his body begins to disintegrate into light. Suddenly, the boy's eyes snap open.
Kim Hyen-woo had been reborn into the body of a young man named Kim Ju-hyuk, 300 years after the tower's fall. The current era seemed satisfactory.
Though his new vessel was terribly weak, all of his knowledge and mastery remained intact. He thought that by simply adapting, he could finally live peacefully, until that translucent window appeared once more. It informed him that in 5 years, the Tower of Destruction would return.
Fury coursed through him.
He had already defeated that monster. He cursed himself for not burning Brace's corpse to ashes. But there was no time for regrets. In this new era, the conditions to conquer the tower should be far easier. This time, he was determined to not only survive, but to truly live and enjoy it all. Then, another message appeared on the panel, leaving him utterly bewildered.
It spoke of finding his lost weapons and memories, hidden in the Valhalla Constellation room on the 3rd underground floor.
In that instant, he knew exactly what he had to do. It would soon be the 4th day in Valhalla, when the top 10 rankings were to be decided. All chosen candidates were summoned to the stadium. Kim Ju-hyuk rose, a fire of excitement in his eyes.
As the participants took their positions, the spectators roared with anticipation, their gazes fixed on the arena.
It was at this same moment that the senior instructor noted the crowd, far larger than any he'd seen in previous years. From high above, He watched the scene unfold. The newcomer, Kim Joo-hook, was poised for battle. The match would begin in 30 seconds. His opponent was already there, the eldest son of the Osin family. Oh-si-hoo, a mere 17 years old. He lacked talent in literature, strategy, and even martial arts. But he possessed a gift that trumped all others. It was his overwhelmingly powerful physique. He could perform feats others couldn't without mana, and his strength grew exponentially with little training.
Born with a top-tier body that needed no effort, he was hailed by all as a natural-born genius.
He glared at his opponent with fearless rage burning in his eyes. The two warriors faced off, the air crackling with tension. But Kim Joo-hook simply raised his middle finger, a silent, mocking insult. The taunt struck its mark, and Oh-si-hoo's fury exploded.
"You piece of trash," he roared, charging forward without a second thought.
Kim Joo-hook knew this reincarnated body couldn't win in a direct clash. His opponent's raw strength was a dangerous, unknown variable. But superior physical power doesn't guarantee victory. Oh-si-hoo threw a mighty punch, aiming to end the fight in a single blow. Yet he dodged it effortlessly. He possessed martial arts to enhance his physique, and another, far more critical weapon in his arsenal. With a fluid motion, he swept the blonde bully's legs out from under him, sending him crashing to the ground.
Oh-si-hoo was left completely stunned, his mind unable to process what had just occurred. With a subtle wink, Kim Joo-hook revealed his true power, the ability to observe. A single, precise blow landed on his foe's vital point. Oh-si-hoo's eyes rolled back as he fell unconscious, utterly defeated.
Kim Joo-hook had won. He knew that if his two abilities weren't in perfect harmony, this outcome would have been impossible. Even though this new body was weaker than his last, it would be more than enough to hunt monsters and reclaim his life as a hunter. He headed for the exit after annihilating his enemy, leaving the entire crowd completely speechless. Whispers erupted from the stands. How could Oh-si-hoo be defeated by such a simple-looking attack? But in the back, one man watched in silent contemplation, understanding everything. He was the head of the Osin family, the king of fists, Ochul-shin. He seethed with anger at the ignorant fools who called that technique simple. His son had ignored martial arts. Yes, but his physique alone should have let him dodge that strike. This time, however, it was a blow he could never evade. His son's temper had clouded his judgment, leading him to charge in blindly. He even unleashed his rarely used magic for a quick finish. But Kim Joo-hook dodged it with a slight tilt of his head. Certain the strike would land, Oh-si-hoo had thrown his entire center of gravity forward, a fatal mistake that sealed his defeat. Surprised by the miss, his opponent's guard was left wide open, creating the perfect opportunity for a counterattack. It meant Kim Joo-hook had moved faster than Oh-si-hoo's maximum speed. He'd had a plan from the very start. A truly monstrous talent for combat. As Ochul-shin processed all of this, he remained silent, lost in deep thought. Unfortunately, he wasn't the only one who recognized the rookie's immense value. Not everyone in the crowd was a fool. The name Kim Joo-hook echoed in his mind. He made a vow that boy would join his family, no matter what it took. The stadium lights blazed to life as the crowd erupted, cheering for their idol, Choi Arin. He smirked at the lunatics, grown men who had served in the military, yet screamed for a 17-year-old girl, calling her Nuna. This was the final ranked match. Kim Joo-hook versus Choi Arin, the second daughter of the esteemed Cho-jin family. The moment the match began, her sword sang from its sheath, ready to deliver the first strike. Kim Joo-hook met her intense gaze with a calm, almost serene expression. For a tense moment, they stood frozen in silence. He realized she was waiting for his first move. Her attempt to read the situation already made her leagues better than his previous foes. A light chuckle escaped his lips as he wondered just what he should do now. He then started walking toward her, his posture relaxed, but his eyes held a terrifying, predatory focus. His hands were casually tucked in his pockets. She stared back, completely unafraid. Her grip on her sword tightened, and brilliant flashes of lightning began to crackle along the blade. The crowd gasped. She had mastered the Cho-jin family's elemental exchange ability. At only 17, she charged forward with astounding courage and determination. The boy simply took a single, deliberate step forward, seemingly giving her a perfect opening to attack. She immediately unleashed a powerful blow, sending a torrent of blue lightning surging towards him. But her blade struck nothing but air. In the blink of an eye, her enemy had completely vanished. Suddenly, a calm voice spoke from right beside her. If you reveal your target with your eyes, it's easy to dodge. She was left utterly bewildered by his impossible speed. In that moment of confusion, a devastating strike landed squarely on her body. Model charge. Her eyes went wide, a cocktail of agony and relief washing over her face for having blocked the attack. Kim Joo-hook just stared, his expression unreadable. Choi Ain clutched her massive blade, using the force of the blow to launch herself backward. A flicker of surprise crossed Kim Joo-hook's mind. She'd actually blocked it. He hadn't felt the soft impact of a human body, but the hard ring of steel. The weight of the sword felt immense, almost unbearable. In a flash, a single fist met her blade.
Choi Ein locked eyes with her opponent, who wordlessly challenged her to survive his next move. He then unleashed a torrent of power, sending her hurtling through the air with a desperate cry.
She slammed into the ground, utterly defeated, and was left there without a second glance.
A strange thought crossed the boy's mind. His posture felt slightly off during that last attack. But it didn't matter. A victory was a victory.
The system panel flashed to life, displaying the top 10 admissions to Valhalla. At number 1 was Kim Juan. He was walking nearby, rolling his shoulder, when a sudden roar of voices made him stop in his tracks. A massive crowd had formed, all begging for his attention, desperate to join his party. Annoyed, he roared for them to shut up, bringing this chapter to a close. Meanwhile, on the community boards, a headline screamed that Kim Joo-hyuk was on the verge of madness, labeling him a crazy psychopath. 92 comments echoed the sentiment, crucifying him for his reprehensible actions and branding him a villain. For a rookie, his arrogance was seen as completely out of line and over the top. As the forums debated his future, inside the grand towers of Valhalla, the freshmen were receiving a warm welcome. Kim Joo-hyuk tuned out the instructor's voice. All this boring information about Valhalla's history was putting him to sleep. His eyes landed on a boy behind him, who immediately flinched and looked away with a nervous, shy expression. Kim Joo-hyuk knew he'd attracted a lot of unwanted attention yesterday, but another, more pressing matter lingered. That system quest about weapons and memories, the one he had received some time ago. As he walked, Kim Joo-hyuk figured it would be an easy task, just get in and get out. But then, he sensed a familiar presence nearby. By now, the opening ceremony was already over. Just ahead lay the virtual combat simulation room. Inside, Kim Leon, Valhalla's former chief instructor from the Trojan Guild, questioned the logic behind the class assignments. Before him stood Yuo Yen of the Great Yusin family, and beside her, Aaron from the Trojan clan. In the middle was Oh Si-hook from the Osin group. They claimed the distribution was random, but somehow, 3 of the 5 family geniuses were in the very same room. And then he saw it. Another problem. His gaze fell upon Kim Joo-hyuk, and he knew. This entire year was doomed. He took a breath, trying to calm his nerves and assert his authority from the very start. He introduced himself to the young cadets, declaring that he would be the one in charge of their class, their new instructor. With his introduction finished, he pressed a single button on the podium before him. The students cried out in shock. In an instant, their surroundings changed, and they were all standing in a vast field. Panic spread like wildfire. "Where are we?" they shouted, having been in a classroom just a moment ago. Kim Leon's hand rested on the hilt of his sword. It was time to show these kids a little taste of true bloodlust. Suddenly, the ground erupted as hideous demonic beings clawed their way out, their eyes burning with rage as they brandished their weapons. The students screamed in pure terror. Auk's mind raced. Orcs and goblins. There had to be at least 100 of them. The grotesque green monsters began their charge. One lunged with razor-sharp claws, while another leaped high, only to be slammed against an invisible protective barrier. A small smile played on Kim Leon's lips. Everything was going according to plan. The barrier was holding perfectly. He then turned and called Kim Joo-hyuk to come closer. The boy approached the podium. The instructor looked down at him and asked if he could handle all of those monsters, completely on his own. He meant the entire horde surrounding the barrier. The boy looked out at them and answered with silence. Kim Leon assumed the boy's ego had finally been crushed. It was natural. For rookies who had only ever seen monsters in comic books, he told Kim Joo-hyuk to stop pretending to think it over and just say no, so the real lesson could finally begin. But then, a faint smirk appeared on the boy's face. The instructor's anger flared. Was this brat laughing at him? Then he realized. Kim Joo-hyuk truly believed he could handle them alone. "You must be bluffing," he sneered. "If you're so certain, then by all means, show us." Kim Joo-hyuk's eyes gleamed. He countered, saying that such a dangerous task on the first day surely couldn't be done without a proper reward. Hearing that, the instructor knew the boy was speaking his language. He quickly asked what kind of bet he had in mind. He replied that if he could handle every single monster out there, then the instructor would have to fulfill any wish he desired, so long as it was within his power to grant. After a moment's thought, the boy announced that while the offer was trivial, he would accept the deal. The instructor's attempt at intimidation fell flat. As the boy simply demanded he hand over the sword, knowing it was impossible to fight those things barehanded, the instructor reluctantly unclasped his own sword and offered it to him. Kim Joo-hyuk's eyes lit up with a familiar excitement as he took the weapon. He slung it onto his back, his gaze fixed on the colossal challenge that awaited. With a defeated look, the instructor could only watch. The other students looked on, captivated by the unfolding spectacle. Kim Joo-hyuk's grip tightened on the hilt as he launched himself into a ferocious battle against the horde, his face a mask of cold fury as he cut down one opponent after another. One of the creatures lunged for a cowardly strike from behind,
But with lightning speed, the boy spun, his blade meeting the attack without a flicker of hesitation.
He mused that his skills weren't too rusty, considering it had been 300 years since he'd last wielded a blade. In his time, the monster plague had forced humanity to use any weapon they could find just to survive. But through it all, the sword felt like an extension of his own soul. His senses sharpened, detecting two things: a flaw in the simulation, and a monster moving in for a treacherous attack from the shadows. Kim Joo-hook sidestepped the pathetic strike with ease. Everything was just as he predicted. Following a simplistic pattern, this was nothing more than a well-crafted simulation full of mindless puppets. Inside the capsule, everyone watched in stunned silence.
Kim Leon couldn't believe his eyes. He had given the boy a nearly worthless training sword.
It held no magic, no special properties, yet in his hands, it carved through the monsters with breathtaking mastery.
It was as if the sword itself was devouring the creatures. The girl was utterly speechless, while the boy simply processed the unfolding madness.
She watched him through the capsule's glass, frozen in place. Not a single word escaped her lips, her expression a mixture of pure shock and disbelief. Having crushed the horde of weak enemies, Kim Joo-hook declared his wish to enter the Constellation Room. He strode out of the arena, heading for the barrier. He then turned, demanding if the instructor would keep his promise, a question that made the man's face twist with irritation. The sun began its slow descent behind the towering city skyscrapers. Kim Leon dismissed the class, telling the exhausted students to return to their dorms and get some rest. Slumped in a chair, the boy thought about how agonizingly long the class was. He just wanted to grab his things and leave. He scoffed at the idea of teaching students, especially since he'd never even attended a school himself. But as dull as it was, he had gleaned a wealth of crucial information, particularly about the history of the constellations. In his past life, such a concept never existed. Here, constellation was a title for mortals who amassed incredible power, becoming godlike beings connected to hunters. Valhalla, located in Korea, was the third largest academy on Earth, housing countless constellation relics. Kim Joo-hook decided that all this talk of monster slaying and swordsmanship was a waste. He needed to get to the dorms and focus on training, because his current body was pitifully weak. But just then, he sensed an unusual presence. The white-haired girl was approaching him from behind. Meanwhile, in a professor's office, a man sipping coffee remarked that his friend must have had a rough day. Kim Leon sighed, admitting it was more humiliating than difficult, and wondered aloud if that new student was truly a high schooler. Lee Sang-cheol was floored to hear the boy had eliminated 120 monsters in the simulation, without ever facing one in reality, and Kim Leon was telling the absolute truth. The senior instructor noted that while Kim Joo-hook looked ordinary, he could sense the weight of a heavy past.
Kim Leon was shocked to learn the boy was an orphan from a small institution in a high-danger zone. Lee Sang-cho confirmed it himself. The boy wasn't lying. Besides, a common con artist would never try to enter Valhalla by making such a chaotic scene at the opening ceremony. So, he asked to enter the Constellation Room, Lee Sang-chol inquired. Kim Leon gave a weary nod. The senior instructor agreed to grant him access to the first basement floor, citing the director's own orders, much to his friend's relief. "Since you brought him here," he said, "you have to take responsibility for him." After all, while the 5th floor was completely off limits, a brief visit to the first shouldn't cause any real trouble. Kim Leon's expression darkened. He voiced his concern about what could happen in the next year, leaving his friend utterly bewildered. Model, dealing with a student from one of the 5 great families was a nightmare, and this class had 3 of them. A fact the senior instructor knew all too well. Instead of offering comfort, he dropped a bombshell. Another class had an exchange student from the notorious Ventrick family, leaving him utterly shocked. Rockdale Ventrick, a direct descendant of the main family branch. Kim Leon recalled the rumors that this boy was a troublemaker, expelled from the prestigious British Academy. He took a deep breath, still on edge, but suddenly, his own problems seemed trivial compared to the storm brewing in the next class. Kim Joo watched the girl with a suspicious gaze. She stared right back, her eyes holding an unspoken challenge. He finally broke the tense silence, asking what she wanted. Her request was as bold as it was direct. "Teach me everything you know about the sword." Kim Joo-hyuk was taken aback. Her desperation to learn his sword art was undeniable, but he flatly refused, prompting her to question his harsh rejection. His answer was as cold as ice. "It's simple, I don't want to." With nothing more to discuss, he turned to leave, but she looked him dead in the eye, her voice pleading, "Please." His reply was even sharper this time, laced with insult. "I already said I don't want to teach you. Are you deaf?" he snarled, his patience gone. "Stop following me. I have no intention of ever being your master." He strode away without a second glance, leaving the girl frozen in place, her face a portrait of sorrow and disappointment. The next day, within the grand halls of Valhalla, Kim Joo sat silently at his desk, lost in a sea of thought. He stared down at his hands,
realizing this new body held more potential than he ever imagined. But potential meant nothing without magical power. His mana control was still dangerously unstable. He knew this could be solved if he found that thing, and for that, he would need to prepare a little magic. Suddenly, an arrogant voice shattered his concentration. It was a blonde noble, the very picture of a bully. Rockdale Ventric, flanked by his servant, Yura Felix, swaggered directly to Kim Joo-hak's desk. Kim didn't bother to look up. "Who are you?" Rockdale scoffed, amused. Only a complete nobody wouldn't recognize his family name. He announced himself, his voice dripping with arrogance. "I won't waste my breath. Tell me, do you desire strength?" He then extended a stunning invitation, a chance to join the main Ventric family. In most clans, branch families were nothing compared to the main lineage. But the Ventric family was different. They had a Constellation Guardian, the beak mask, setting them apart. Typically, an S-class warrior or higher would serve a constellation, who in turn would directly choose a champion, granting them unimaginable power and protection. But the Ventric's patron was unique, having signed a pact with a non-constellation individual to avoid the usual celestial bindings. Because of this special arrangement, the family wielded immense power in Europe, and joining their ranks meant attaining incredible influence. This very authority, backed by his powerful family, had molded Rockdale Ventric into an insufferably arrogant man. Not long ago, an incident at the British Academy had gotten him expelled, but for someone of his stature, it was a meaningless setback. At the gates of that academy, flanked by his assistant, he had sworn that he always gets what he wants. After all, for a member of the Ventric family, the path would always be cleared, no matter the failure. He refused to give that person the satisfaction. Back in the present, his gaze was locked on Kim Joo-hook. This was the boy who had stolen the spotlight at the entrance ceremony. Rockdale decided he would bring this rising star under his control, and so he made his grand proposal accept and gain an audience with the Ventric constellation. But the rejection he received was swift and absolute. Rockdale was left speechless, completely stunned. Even his servant wore a mask of disbelief. The humiliation quickly boiled over into pure rage. But Kim Joo-hyuk saw through the act. Rockdale screamed, "You rude, disgusting commoner!" Suddenly, a powerful voice cut through the tension. Ordering everyone to their seats and calling out the arrogant noble, Rockdale's fury intensified. To be addressed so disrespectfully by his full name was an insult. The man was the senior instructor, Lee Sang-chul. "Valhalla has its own rules," he declared, his voice firm. "This is not your academy." The show-off glared, recognizing the combat instructor's fearsome reputation. Gritting his teeth, he swallowed his anger for now and returned to his seat. But the look he gave Kim Joo was a silent promise that this was far from over. Throughout the entire confrontation, Kim's red eyes watched in silence. Later, when classes finally concluded for the day, Kim Joo-hyuk reflected that he'd learned nothing about the Constellation Hall and had only wasted his morning on an arrogant fool. He was lost in thought, pondering the guild scouts, the students, and the instructors all trying to recruit him. That's when he sensed a familiar presence approaching from behind. It was the persistent girl, here to ask him about swordsmanship once again. He let out a frustrated sigh. It seemed she simply refused to take no for an answer. Meanwhile, inside Grand Valhalla's most exclusive hall, unbridled rage was tearing the place apart. It was the arrogant Rockdale Ventric, his fury uncontrollable. He was seething over the humiliation he suffered at the hands of that orphan. "Kim Joo-hook, you're a get Dara on the line, now," he roared. "I have someone who needs to be dealt with." And with that threat hanging in the air, his rage continued to burn. He snarled his poor assistant's name again. She stood frozen in terror as he grabbed a fistful of her hair, demanding a response. "Do you still think you're the precious eldest daughter of the palace family?" he hissed. He threatened to cast her out, forcing a desperate plea from the terrified girl. With a vicious shove, he threw her to the floor. "Call Dara," he commanded once more. "Tell him there's a pest to exterminate. And tell the second year from the Rise family, I want to see him." The terrified, helpless blonde assistant could only whisper her obedience. Back in the Valhalla dormitory, Kim Joo-hyuk was deep in meditation, a brilliant blue aura radiating from his body. His focus was absolute. Suddenly, he coughed, smoke erupting from his lips. He was forced to realize it again. This body was truly useless, incapable of wielding true magic. He fell into a deep silence, his mind drifting back to that afternoon, when that girl had appeared behind him yet again, approaching him for the second time. They had reached the dormitory entrance, but her persistence knew no bounds. She repeated her request like a broken record until his patience wore thin. "Fine," he declared. 10 million won per lesson." A shadow of disappointment crossed her face, assuming she couldn't afford it. He turned to walk away, but then she demanded his phone, leaving him utterly baffled. "What are you doing?" he asked. She was punching in her number to make the transfer easier, leaving Kim Joo-hyuk completely stunned. A moment later, his phone buzzed. a transfer notification for 100 million won, all for his masterful techniques. He scoffed, telling her he'd decline the transaction immediately. Back in the present, he replayed the shock he'd felt.
How could a high school student possibly have 100 million won? If he taught her, he couldn't reveal his true secrets.
But that amount of money was a game changer. He could use it to fund what he truly needed. In the end, it didn't matter. Even with a mana pool as shallow as a beggar's, he rose to his feet. His true mission was about to begin.
He was going to find the secret vault. Under the cloak of darkness, he moved through the dense forest.
He'd checked the histories. Most vaults hidden 300 years ago had long been destroyed. From his memories, only 4 could possibly remain. And it was more likely only 3 had survived the ages. But one thing was certain, they were hidden somewhere in the Valhalla Mountains. He would not give up. He began to circulate his blue mana.
The vault's location could only be found by sensing the marble, a material that resonated with his unique power. A brilliant circle of light flared to life on the ground. At last, Kim Joo-huk had found a clue.
He approached the glowing neon circle and began to dig, cursing the weakness of his current body.
"If I knew I'd be this pathetic," he muttered, "I would have buried it somewhere easier to reach."
And if it wasn't for the Tower of Destruction 300 years ago, none of this would have been necessary. The world had been on the verge of annihilation, with no safe haven for his treasures. He had built these great vaults to protect everything. He held on to the faith that his legacy would be safe and sound, just as the sun was beginning to rise over Valhalla. And finally, Kim Joo-huk found what he had been searching for, the legendary Vault of Treasure. The location of the lock was a mystery to any other, but for him, it was instinct. No ordinary key could open this seal. So he wove a thread of pure mana, shaping it into a special key. It slid into the keyhole perfectly, a small victory. With every ounce of strength in his frail body, he pushed the heavy door open. At last, he stepped inside, landing before a mountain of countless golden treasures.
A wide grin spread across his face. "My darlings," he whispered to the riches. "Did you miss me?"
He stared at the fortune with a calm expression. With his finances secured, he could now search for what he truly needed. But then, his eyes caught something that made his heart stop. There they were, the storage stones. He had imbued them with a trace of his magic to maintain the vaults. And now, the day to reclaim them had finally come. He grasped the magic stone in his hand. Instantly, a brilliant blue light erupted from his palm. This was the sign of a true storage stone. Its magical power was overflowing. Just as predicted, he halted the extraction, deciding to handle the other stones first. The plan was simple: transport the lighter jewels before the heavy gold bars. The sun shone brightly over Valhalla, but Kim Joo-huk was slumped in his chair, dead to the world like a zombie. He had to be a cursed lunatic, planning to build a vault when his muscles were already screaming from a little bit of work. In a flash, the girl appeared before him once more, her gaze intense. She demanded he teach her the way of the sword. It was obvious she was never going to let this go. Her persistence was a puzzle. Why choose him when her family could provide the best training? He cornered Erin Choi, demanding answers. Her reply was simple yet shocking. She had never witnessed anyone handle a blade with more mastery than Kim Joo-huk. He scoffed, questioning her about her own father. The head of the great Trojan family was surely a better swordsman. But just as she was about to reveal the truth about her father, the instructor's voice summoned Kim Joo-huk to the teacher's lounge, leaving him completely baffled. He had a strong feeling this was connected to his previous request. And since answers were what he craved, he shot up without hesitation. He rose from his chair and walked away, leaving the girl standing in his shadow. She asked for permission to speak, then fell silent. A flicker of sadness crossed her face. Kim Joo-hyuk stopped and gave her an ultimatum. "Tomorrow morning, 6 o'clock, meet me at the local training grounds." She was completely stunned by his sudden acceptance. The boy raised an eyebrow. "Or perhaps you don't want the opportunity." A fire lit in her eyes as she snapped back to reality. She declared with absolute certainty, "I will be there." Meanwhile, in the teacher's lounge, the instructor got straight to business. With a class starting in minutes, there was no time to waste. First, Kim Joo-hyuk's access to the Constellation building was officially approved. All he had to do was head to the building's basement. However, there was a strict warning. He was forbidden from venturing any deeper than the first basement floor. He simply nodded and asked when he could enter. He learned he could go that very night, and confirmed he would do so immediately. Kim Min-on was surprised. He fully expected the boy to argue about the restriction, to cause a scene. With their business concluded, the two went their separate ways. The boy vanished from the room in an instant. Night had fallen upon Valhalla. This was the place he had been searching for. He stood before the treasure of Valhalla Academy, the Constellation Hall. His eyes scanned the area. 2 guards dressed in black stood watch like stone gargoyles. As he observed them carefully, one spoke quietly into a radio. Kim Joo-hook recalled the warning about security. It was far tighter than the main gate, a testament to the building's importance. But it wasn't just the guards that concerned him. It was the exterior walls themselves. They were covered in shimmering magical wards, completely sealed except for the very entrance.
Kim Joo-hyuk thought back to his question for the professor. He'd asked what would happen if someone tried to reach the second basement floor illegally.
Kim Leeman's reply had been chilling. It wouldn't make you a criminal. It would get you expelled instantly. But there was more. They would go insane before ever leaving the academy grounds. The warning had left the boy unsettled.
Kim Leeman explained that on the second floor, the raw power of the constellations flowed without restriction. Anyone who touched it would have their mind shattered into a million pieces.
The boy now fully understood the gravity of the situation. The instructor, meanwhile, couldn't shake a feeling of unease. Why had the boy asked such a specific question? It was as if he truly intended to go down there. But he quickly dismissed the absurd thought. The academy's top entrant wouldn't throw everything away. Staying here was the much better option. Kim Lamon had given him only 30 minutes. The boy had agreed without issue, saying he would be back soon. Suddenly, the system panel appeared before him, displaying the familiar mission objective. He studied its glowing text. Expulsion meant nothing to him. He had come to Valhalla for this one purpose. He had to reach the third basement floor. The stairs seemed to descend into an endless abyss. As he rushed down them, something loomed in the darkness ahead. The area looked like a colossal prison. He was certain the Constellation Hall was supposed to be on the first basement floor. None of this felt right, and for a moment, he doubted if he should proceed. Suddenly, the panel flashed again. Requirements met, it chimed. Transporting to the hall? He was left stunned, wondering what was happening and where he was being taken. In a blinding flash of light, his body began to dematerialize, vanishing along with the system panel. A familiar voice cut through the air in this strange new place. It was his infamous nemesis. Brace! Kim Joo-hook froze, his face a mask of pure shock and disbelief. Brace smirked, remarking that their reunion was 300 years in the making. But his speech was cut short as a fist crashed into his jaw. The blow came from Kim Joo-hook himself. A grim satisfaction crossed his face as he stared down the cursed figure. Brace stumbled, pleading with his enemy to calm down, only to be met with another brutal punch to the face. He desperately tried to de-escalate, to have a proper conversation. But his words were useless. Kim Joo-hyuk only wanted his death. Soon, Brace was on the ground, weakened and defenseless. As Kim Joo-hook's own fatigue began to set in, he growled that he was never one for using his fists. But this case was different. Brace had utterly destroyed his future. Not only that, Brace had stolen his wealth, his honor, and all the years he had poured into his disciples. Gasping, Brace asked a crucial question. Aren't you even curious what kind of place this is? Kim Joo-hook paused. He had to admit, the space itself seemed deceptively ordinary. Brace revealed the truth. This was an imaginary world, a pocket dimension existing inside a sacred relic. Kim Joo-hook's eyes widened in amazement. Everything Kim Joo-hook was seeing, Brace explained, was an illusion. His physical body had ceased to exist 300 years ago. He confessed that his spirit had been trapped inside this relic the entire time. The shocking revelation hit the boy like a physical blow. A faint, arrogant smirk played on Brace's lips as he declared, I have become a constellation. For a moment, Kim Joo-hook was rendered speechless. Then, his fury erupted once more, and another powerful punch slammed into Brace's face. Meanwhile, outside the building, Kim Lamoon waited anxiously. Suddenly, a figure materialized right before his eyes. It was Kim Joo-hook, being questioned by local guards. Lehman demanded to know if he had caused trouble, but Joo-hook claimed he had only been looking around. He added that he hadn't dared to venture any deeper, not if he valued his own life. The instructor ordered him to go home. Kim Joo-hook agreed without argument and quickly left the area. On the way back to his dormitory, his mind replayed the impossible reunion. He couldn't care less that Brace had become a constellation. There was only one answer he truly needed. What in the world was that transparent notification panel? In the relic, Brace had claimed ignorance, which earned him another fist to the face. Kim Joo-hook was not joking around. Brace finally confessed that after being killed, his spirit had been trapped here for 300 years, completely powerless. Hearing this, Kim Joo-hook's rage cooled slightly. He opened his hand, discovering Brace had received the exact same notification. The information was a direct order. Brace was to contact the reincarnated Kim Joo-hook and help him retrieve his memories. Because of this, a suspicious figure had appeared, making him question the real reason he became the owner of the Tower of Destruction. Kim Joo-hook was stunned. Who was this person pulling the strings? And what was their ultimate goal? Brace admitted he didn't know. His own memory was in pieces and wouldn't return all at once. He then asked what Kim Joo-hook's notification said. Kim Joo-hook explained the mission was to find a weapon and his memories, but the rest of the text was obscured by strange symbols. He insisted he hadn't lost any memories at all. But Brace suggested that perhaps his memory wasn't as whole as he thought. Since he had already found the weapon, the rest would surely follow. Kim Joo-hook was completely baffled. What weapon? Brace explained this space was the realm of the 4 village swords, which had become sacred relics. He had become a constellation by using one of them. Rage ignited in Kim Joo-hook's eyes once again as he called him a cursed being. Back in the present, he struggled to process the bombshell. His own village sword had become a relic that housed his greatest enemy. The idea was maddening. He wanted to destroy it all and walk away. But there was one critical issue. Kim Joo-hook clutched a blue magical sword in his hand. He thought about Brace, the king of destruction, and the new mission that required this very weapon. Suddenly, an arrogant voice broke his concentration, demanding his identification. It was a group of academy bullies and show-offs, clearly looking for a fight. Their leader, Lyric Sunrise of the powerful Sunrise family, sneered that the seniors were away and demanded the freshman introduce himself. Kim Joo-hook wondered what kind of pathetic seniors preyed on freshmen. The lackeys sneered back, commenting on his shocking lack of manners. One of them asked for permission to beat the boy up, and the leader gave a simple nod of approval. He swaggered toward Kim Joo-hook, ready to teach him a lesson. But as he began to speak, a massive kick sent him flying straight into his chest. Kim Joo-hook cracked his knuckles and told the thugs, "Stop talking and come at me." And with that, the chapter comes to a close. The short-haired thug groaned, agony twisting his features from the devastating kick. Kim Joo-hyuk launched forward, unleashing another precise strike. This time, a brutal blow straight to his enemy's face. The bully sailed through the air, completely overwhelmed. He crashed onto his back with a heavy thud that echoed through the area. His momentum finally stopped as he slammed hard against a wall. The blonde leader could only think one thing: this guy was insane. His eyes widened in pure terror. Just moments ago, the boy was unarmed. But now, a gleaming sword rested in his hand. Kim Joo-hyuk savored the feeling. The perfect grip. It had been far too long since he'd experienced something so incredible. He shot a glare at the remaining goons. "Attack now," he ordered, "or I'll crush every last one of you." Just 3 hours earlier, Rockdale Ventrick had given the blonde boy a simple task. All he had to do was take care of one weak, pathetic student. In return, the Sunrise family would receive a handsome reward. He presented the target's information of first year. He told him not to worry about using weapons. Any mess would be cleaned up. Finally, he asked if the deal was accepted. The blonde boy understood perfectly and agreed to the terms. He had stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him without a second thought. He scoffed at the target's first-place rank. A first-year novice was no match for a second-year powerhouse like himself. The power gap between years was absolute, all thanks to the contracts first years made with the constellations. To advance, Valhalla students had to enter the Constellation Room during their second semester and forge a pact, becoming true second years. Once they became contractors, they could channel the immense power of their guardian constellation. And in the blonde leader's mind, Kim Joo-hook didn't even have a guardian. Crushing him was supposed to be child's play. That was his firm belief. But there was a fatal flaw in his logic. In the present, Kim Joo-hyuk's blade danced, felling another one of the show-offs. The thug cursed, clutching a blood-red knife.
But a sudden whoosh was the only warning he got, before the rookie's sword mercilessly erased him from the fight.
Suddenly, Kim Joo-hyuk sensed movement. Another thug was attempting a cowardly attack from the side. The boy hurled his blade with all his might, but it only struck the dirt floor with a pathetic thud. The attacker froze in confusion. His ultimate strike had missed completely in the next instant. Kim Joo was beside him, mocking his pathetic attempt.
A swift, precise strike from the sword's hilt connected with the thug's stunned face.
The bully went flying, leaving his friends paralyzed with shock at the unbelievable scene unfolding before them. He finally landed headfirst with a brutal crunch. The blonde leader watched in horror as the rookie dismantled the second years one by one, without even breaking a sweat. Before becoming contractors, second years were supposed to have a massive advantage. Their superior skills should have been enough, but they were proving utterly useless. The leader couldn't comprehend this bizarre, unheard of swordsmanship.
It looked like the rookie was barely using any strength, yet anyone he struck could no longer stand.
Kim Joo faced the last few opponents. "Anyone else want to waste my time?" he challenged, his voice dripping with menace. The blonde boy could feel the panic in the air. His crew was torn between attacking and running for their lives. "Don't be afraid," he yelled. "He's just one weak, useless rookie." Kim Joo smirked. "You've got a lot of nerve for a pack leader." The insult ignited the blonde's fury, and he charged forward recklessly. But in an instant, he felt a cold touch. It was the razor-sharp edge of Kim Joo-hook's sword against his body. "You knew this would happen," Kim Joo mocked. "Yet you stood perfectly still." He then delivered a final, powerful blow. The blonde's world spun. How did the rookie get so close? So fast, then everything faded to black.
Kim Joo opened his palm and slapped the unconscious boy's face several times, forcing him awake.
"Who are you?" he demanded. "And why did you pick a fight with me for no reason?" The blonde leader stammered that they were all his seniors. Kim Joo Hyuk knew this wasn't a simple grudge. Someone had to be pulling the strings.
A pale boy with earrings finally cracked. "We were just told to break the nose of the first-ranked rookie. That's all."
Kim Joo-hyuk scoffed at their so-called loyalty. As he turned to leave, the arrogant bully called out to him. "If word of this gets out," the boy threatened, "you'll be expelled on the spot." But Kim Joo-hyuk just laughed. "Oh, everyone will know," he said. "They'll all hear about this shameful, embarrassing defeat." A group of second-year students tried to jump a single freshman and ended up getting miserably crushed. A humiliation like that could ruin their chances of ever joining a decent guild. The choice, he implied, was theirs to make. With those parting words, Kim Joo-hyuk was gone, leaving behind a scene of utter humiliation and defeat. The clock ticked past 8:28. Rockdale Ventrick seethed with impatience, desperately awaiting the call. And then, a call from Merrick Sunrise. A wave of excitement washed over him as he demanded to know if the job was done. But the boy's voice was cold. He revealed the contractor's name, announced he was dropping the job, and declared this chapter officially closed. The chapter opens with Rockdale Ventrick reeling from the boy's betrayal. The blonde boy's warning echoed in his mind. Stay away from anything and everything involving Kim Joo-hyuk. He couldn't comprehend what went wrong. Just hours ago, victory against that cursed boy had felt absolutely certain. His mind raced. He could file a report with the administration. Any visible bruises would be all the evidence they needed to proceed. If the blonde boy had just followed the plan, the Ventrick family's sponsorship and immense rewards would have been his. But the boy knew better. Not even the backing of such a powerful family could restore honor once it was shattered. He ended the call, leaving Rockdale Ventrick to stew in a cauldron of pure, unadulterated fury. Roaring with rage, he hurled his phone to the floor, shattering it. His assistant could only watch in terrified silence. He bellowed for Yura, who immediately answered his summons. She had already followed his orders, but there was a problem. Dare was far away, and his arrival would take time. This delay only fueled Rockdale's burning anger. Meanwhile, across the globe in the beautiful country of Mexico, within the halls of Area Academy, bodies were sprawled across the ground. Amidst the chaos, a hulking figure stared down at his high-tech phone. This was the fearsome Dara Ventrick. His brother needed him in Korea to handle someone named Kim Joo-hyuk. The reward was already waiting, and a greedy smile spread across his face. He thought his life was over, that there was no one he could turn to for money after being cast out. But now, destiny had offered him a golden opportunity. The next day at 6 p.m., in Valhalla's Grand Training Hall, Kim Joo-hyuk marveled at the immense space, his body humming with excitement, ready to push past his limits. But suddenly, a voice cut through the silence, questioning his presence. He turned to find Barge from the sealed sword, a sight that left him completely stunned. Kim Joo-hyuk's first thought was that the boy had somehow escaped, and that he'd have to beat him down and reseal him. But seeing that wasn't the case, the tension vanished. Planting his feet, Kim Joo began to stretch, casually questioning his former foe. He asked about the sword, now an artifact, which was supposed to be safely stored at Valhalla, and how they had managed to leave the Constellation room with it. Kim Joo-hyuk's concern grew as Brace revealed he had swapped the real weapon with a nearly identical replica. When questioned how, he simply stated that even without his power, the ability to create such perfect forgeries remained. Kim Joo-hyuk realized Brace had no idea why he possessed these strange abilities. Just then, the gray-haired girl arrived on the scene. Still in the middle of his stretches, Kim Joo-hyuk was surprised to see her there. She immediately asked about her swordsmanship lessons, but he shot that down. Today wasn't about the sword, it was about building her foundation. The cute girl looked utterly baffled by this. Still, her determination to learn was absolute. She would do whatever it took. Kim Joo-hyuk ordered her to start stretching, and she quickly complied. It seemed basic, but improving her stamina was the key to absorbing and controlling her mana more effectively. This training method was unconventional, prioritizing a crucial, yet often overlooked aspect of power. Koi Erin possessed a massive reserve of mana, but her physical stamina was no better than that of an average student. She announced she was done stretching. Kim Joo-hyuk's expression hardened. The real training was about to begin. He put them both through a grueling set of push-ups, followed by a seemingly endless number of squats. After that, they moved on to punishing upper body exercises. Soon, Koyen was a heap on the floor, completely destroyed and gasping for air. To her horror, she learned this was only the warm-up. Kim Joo-hyuk loomed over her. "Get up," he commanded. "We still have to run 20 long kilometers around the grounds. Later, in Valhalla's first-year class." Kim Joo-hyuk mused on the girl's condition. He could see she had a body with incredible potential for growth. She sat beside him, looking like a zombie, with dark circles under her eyes and an expression of pure exhaustion. Just then, the class teacher's voice boomed, demanding silence from everyone in the room. Lilia, the elite instructor for the Dimensional Monsters class, announced a surprise written exam for the day. Though she had mentioned it on their first day, she expected every student to have prepared.
Today, she would gauge their knowledge on how to subdue each type of monster. And with that, the test began.
An intense focus filled the room, with every student poring over their papers. Even Koan seemed to be fighting a battle with the questions. But Kim Joo-hyuk simply stared at the sheet, as if it were his greatest foe. Suddenly, the instructor glanced at a highly advanced, stylish watch on her wrist.
"Time's up," she declared, her voice cutting through the silence, and then gave instructions for submitting their answers. This test wouldn't affect their overall ranking, but it would determine their roles in the next practical lesson. Once every paper was collected, she revealed their next class, their first official lesson in the virtual combat communication room. With a curt farewell, she swept out of the classroom. Kim Joo-hyuk stood silently, a thoughtful look on his face. Brace approached him, questioning his bizarre test-taking method, shocked to learn he'd been observed so closely. The rival claimed he was just bored and asked what he really thought of the protagonist. He clarified that, more accurately, he could only perceive the boy's thoughts when they were directly related to him. Kim Joo-hyuk simply stated he wrote the answers he knew to be true, and his rival replied with a knowing, "I see." Meanwhile, in the first-year teacher's lounge, Lilia was seething. How dare Kim Joo-hyuk call those worthless scribbles answers? At that moment, Kim Lingen was walking past, a fresh cup in his hand. He was drawn by a strange, furious energy radiating from nearby. It was the instructor, practically vibrating with rage. He cautiously approached her, asking if she was grading the test papers from his class. She confirmed it, explaining how the test results would shape her next lesson, revealing the valuable data hidden within the simple questions. She remarked that, as expected of Class A's prodigies from the most prestigious families, everyone had performed exceptionally, leaving Kim Lingen quite surprised. He excused himself to leave, and the teacher gave a short, affirmative reply. He continued on his way, taking a sip from the mysterious white cup. Suddenly, a furious scream ripped through the air, startling him so badly he spilled his drink everywhere. The shriek came from the instructor, who was now staring at Kim Joo's test. He approached her again, asking if the prodigy hadn't performed well. He soon discovered the truth: the boy hadn't just failed. He had mocked the entire exam. The revelation left him utterly speechless. Lilia declared this insult could not be tolerated. She would reveal his answers to the entire class, and show him that dealing with monsters wasn't so simple. A week later, inside Valhalla's virtual combat simulation, Lilia announced the test results. While most students had excelled, there was one glaring exception. "Kim Joo-hyuk," she commanded. "Step forward." He moved without a hint of hesitation, coming to a stop before her. The two faced off as Lilia presented him with his test sheet. It was covered in a sea of red ink. The teacher then announced to everyone that Kim Joo-hyuk had received a 0 for clearly not taking the exam seriously. He calmly disagreed, insisting he had given it his all. And so, she began her interrogation. First question: what is the most effective way to handle a stone goblin? Kim Joo-hyuk's answer echoed in the silent room: strike it directly in the stomach. Second question: what should one do when facing 8 charging wild goblins? His reply: send each one to hell, starting with the one in front. The instructor was in disbelief. He wasn't even trying to hide his arrogance, presenting these ridiculous answers as fact. The textbook way to defeat a stone goblin was not with a sword, as its hide was far too durable for a normal blade. Lilia doubted Kim Joo-hyuk could even scratch it. "I can end it with a single strike," he replied, directly contradicting her. His boundless ego was infuriating, yet his confidence was unshakable. Fine. If Kim Joo-hyuk was so certain of his answers, she would grant him a special opportunity to prove it. A deafening roar suddenly echoed through the virtual space. A monster materialized, its presence a wave of intimidation. It stood towering before the prodigy and the protagonist. The teacher laid out her challenge if he could defeat the stone goblin exactly as he described. She would change his grade on the spot. Kim Joo-hyuk simply said he understood. He casually placed his failed test on the control panel. He then selected a single, ordinary sword from the weapon rack and charged toward the stone goblin without a shred of fear. The beast glared back, its grotesque face a mask of fury. The teacher knew his record. He had slain 120 goblins before. His talent was undeniable, but this was different. Against a creature of living rock like this one, a random sword would never be enough. A blood-curdling scream suddenly tore through the air. The boy moved like a blur, landing one precise blow after another. His teacher could only stare, completely astonished by what she was seeing. The goblin groaned in desperation, a gaping wound torn across its body, a deep crack spiderwebbing across its skull. But Kim Joo-hyuk was just getting started. Mana began to swirl around him in a visible torrent. He discarded the simple sword, tossing it away like a worthless toy.
He ended the battle with almost no effort, no real thrill. A single strike to the goblin's stomach, and the fight was over. A young girl watched, utterly impressed. Without any magic, he had slain a stone goblin with nothing more than a blade. The burly, blonde-haired boy watched in stunned silence, completely shocked. Even the renowned Choi Irene was visibly amazed.
Lilia finally let out a long sigh and asked how he'd managed such a feat. He just shrugged and said he'd simply struck its stomach, leaving the teacher utterly puzzled.
She knew that to kill a stone goblin with a mere sword, one would need the strength of at least an A-class contractor. That was the only thing that made sense. And yet, this boy had done it with just a weapon. He then asked if his answer was correct. But Lilia shook her head. No, that was only one question. And there are more to come. The boy was perplexed. It felt as if everything was destined to happen all over again. Without warning, the very ground began to split open. He was amazed at the sight. A vast, dark tunnel that stretched into an endless abyss. Kim Joo-hook immediately turned to his teacher, asking what this was. Her command was sharp. Focus, look ahead. Then, a faint footstep echoed from the darkness. Monstrous figures began to emerge from the shadows of the tunnel. Lilia knew this was a true challenge. These goblins had rage issues, and one wrong move could trigger their scream, summoning every goblin in the area. Normally, the only options were to use magic to wipe them out instantly, or flee. And while the boy could only see 3 goblins before him now, for every mistake he made, 5 more would appear. Even with his sword, this would be difficult. Lilia had even heard that his speed with the blade was surprisingly slow. He then unleashed a series of devastating strikes, hitting the first enemy squarely in the forehead, sending the others into a furious rage. The green goblin remained on high alert, but it was useless. A swift blow to its cursed mouth sent it crashing brutally to its knees. The teacher was left speechless by his performance. The boy simply boasted that he had answered the second question correctly as well. On another day, at the Valhalla Training Center, Kim Joo-hook and Choyen were on the treadmills, running at an incredibly fast pace. The numbers on the speed trackers were completely off the charts. Soon, the silver-haired girl collapsed to the ground, utterly exhausted. Once again, she was left gasping desperately for air. Kim Joo-hook looked down at her, not saying a word, an amused smirk on his face. "Don't they train you in your clan?" he asked. "To struggle with such a simple exercise?" She retorted that they didn't push themselves in that way. He shot back, "Then how will you fight against the truly strong and horrifying monsters?" She responded with confidence, declaring she could use her magical power by borrowing strength from the constellations. Kim Joo thought to himself that it was just as he'd expected. Instead of training their own bodies, they focused only on magical power, relying on the constellations. By neglecting their physical abilities, they were fine as long as they could borrow that power. But the risks were immense. There was always the chance of being trapped in a labyrinth or a dungeon with a magic-restricting spell. Not only that, but their mana could be completely depleted after a prolonged battle. And what if the constellations simply refused to lend their power? After pondering this, Kim Joo called out to the girl. He asked if she truly thought this stamina training was worth anything to her. Choi Aaron immediately answered yes, because he had promised to teach her swordsmanship if she completed it. He was stunned by her direct response, because that was precisely the reason he'd made her do it. She was confused by his reaction, but they brushed it off. It was time to wrap up the day's training and head to the academy. She didn't understand why he wasn't leaving. Kim Joo-hook simply explained that he was going to do one more set. He asked if she wanted to join him too, but then reconsidered and dropped the question. Choi Aaron quickly bid him farewell and left the facility, leaving Kim Joo-hook all alone, holding a gigantic weight. Brace suddenly asked, "Is Choi Aaron the girl's real name?" His enemy simply replied that it was. The villain seemed astonished. And she endured that training without even complaining. Kim Joo-hyuk explained that he'd only decided to train her in the sword because she had pestered him endlessly. He also responded to another of Brace's questions, saying he'd never revealed the truth to her, but he suspected she already knew. Both of them found it intriguing. That girl had grasped the true nature of his strength just by observing him, which was precisely why Kim Joo-hook would teach her his skills. Suddenly, a harsh grunt echoed through the room. A monstrously muscular man was bench-pressing an impossible amount of weight. Sweat poured from his body as he groaned with the effort. Then, his eyes locked onto Kim Joo-hyuk. For a moment, they just stared, a silent tension filling the air. Joo-hyuk broke the silence, asking how long he'd been there. The man answered that it was his routine. He'd been there since the start, always training after class. Without another word, he quickly made his excuses and vanished. Kim Joo-hyuk's mind immediately went to Se-hyuk-ho's martial skills and powerful build. But Brace demanded to know why he was so interested in that muscle-bound man. Brace explained that a man like Se-hyuk was destined for greatness, far beyond those who only relied on magical power. Joo-hyuk then questioned Brace about the cursed constellations. Brace could only admit that he didn't really know. The boy scoffed at his patron's ignorance, but Brace defended himself. explaining he'd been isolated for 300 years, cut off from the affairs of other constellations. He then hinted that Joo-hyuk could find the answers himself if he dared to complete the new mission in the system tab. The offer left Kim Joo-hyuk lost in a spiral of thoughts. Just then, the system panel flared to life, displaying a new mission with critical warnings. It pointed to the heart of the Great Valhalla Forest, home of the Mandragora. A chill ran down his spine. It was the final survival zone from the first semester.
He cursed his luck. If it weren't for this mission, he could have just grabbed his gear and left. But it seemed that for now, he would have to move in the shadows.
Brace immediately called him out on his cautious thoughts. Joo-hyuk shot back, the memory of his last fight still fresh. He declared that if he hadn't been ruthless, his own head would have been crushed, just like Brace's was. Kim Joo-hyuk realized he was trapped. He couldn't leave until this mission was complete, which meant the secrets of his reincarnation would eventually reveal themselves. Meanwhile, far away in the United Kingdom, within London's Ventric mansion, the ancient estate was filled with unnerving paintings, their eyes seeming to follow every move. At a massive table sat a man and a woman, the air thick with authority. The woman was the first to speak. She was Adelia Ventric, the vice head of the family, and she demanded to know what had happened. The man reported that the labyrinth near Reading had been conquered. Adelia offered faint praise, then asked if there was anything else. He mentioned recruiting some promising talent he'd found, specifically a survivor from the notorious robber clan. The vice head's interest was piqued, and she pressed him for more details. The man confirmed the survivor was incredibly strong, and his companions were all A-class contractors. Adelia consented, granting them the Ventric's blessing. She ordered him to test their capabilities, and he readily agreed. Then she asked once more if his report was finished, but he hesitated. There was one more thing, a report concerning Rockdale Ventric. He spoke of a recent incident, informing her that Desir had been summoned to South Korea.
A storm of fury erupted on Adelia's face. Desir Ventric, the black sheep of the family, the most wicked delinquent to ever bear their name. His crimes were legendary, using the family name to kill 5 people at the British Academy over a simple argument when he was only 19.
By the age of 20, the Ventric family had completely disowned him. Adelia seethed. After years in hiding, he was now moving to meet Rockdale.
She gave a cold command to place Rockdale under constant surveillance. Her subordinate bowed in affirmation.
She then ordered him to warn the arrogant young boy. If Rockdale was caught in any suspicious activity, he would be cast out from the family instantly. The man affirmed her command, concluded his report, and swiftly excused himself, leaving Adelia to her dark thoughts in the vast, empty room. She sat in silence, her expression unreadable, her mind racing. She thought of all those cursed fools, wielding powers they never earned. True ability was something else entirely.
On the back of her chair, an inscription read, "All for one, and everything is only for one person." In the end, all power was destined to be hers.
Lost in her ambition, she glanced up for confirmation, seeking it from the haunting painting of their guardian constellation. Back at Valhalla Academy, the professor's lecture droned on about the word malefactor. In modern times, the word described those who used the power of constellations for evil ends. Malefactors worked alone or in shadowy organizations, and among them, one group was the most infamous of all Onagod. As Kim Joo-hyuk listened, he reflected. Physical training was making him stronger, but he also felt a natural talent for using mana. He wasn't a genius, not yet, but he was far better than before his reincarnation. Still, something felt incomplete. This strange recovery forced him to question everything. Why was his body so pathetic before? During his first attempt at circulation, he could barely finish. His mana was lower than a commoner's, and his body was so frail that just digging a little left him on the verge of collapse. Yet, even for a weak body, this level of deterioration felt unnatural. Some incident must have crippled him in the past. But dwelling on it now was pointless. Suddenly, a delicate finger tapped on his desk. He glanced up, his expression unreadable. It was the campus beauty, Yu So-yan. She left a crumpled note on his desk and walked away. The boy was surprised by the gesture. On the paper was a single, bold word, "Hi." Kim Joo-hyuk wondered what she was plotting. A moment later, their instructor announced that students could leave campus for the weekend, but they had to submit a formal request. And with that brief announcement, the lesson concluded. Leaving campus? The idea intrigued Kim Joo-hyuk. He immediately filled out a request for a Saturday trip, using a completely trivial reason. Grace was surprised by his decision. After confirming he was serious, she asked where he was planning to go. But before he could answer, a timid voice called out to him. It was the small, beret-wearing girl. The two of them exchanged a few words about the incident from earlier. Kim Joo-hyuk noted that he'd replied to her message, but got no response. He urged her to speak quickly, as he had a form to submit and no time to waste. The young girl stumbled over her shy words, unable to form a single sentence without hesitating. Losing his patience, Kim Joo-hyuk called her crazy and told her to just nod if she couldn't talk. her face flushed with anger at the insult. She challenged his comment, but he shot back coldly, saying it was just like her to get angry over nothing.
He pressed her again, demanding to know what she truly wanted. Her mind flashed back to the moment she saw it all. Kim Joo-hook's impossible fight against that horrifying stone goblin. She was completely mesmerized by that battle. He had used pure swordsmanship, without a single drop of magic. It defied everything the textbooks described. All she wanted was to ask how he slew that monster. But her pride wouldn't let the words escape. Finally, with a deep sigh, she mustered every ounce of her courage. But just as she opened her mouth to speak, their teacher appeared, asking the very same question. The gray-haired instructor's eyes gleamed with excitement, desperate to learn his secret. Kim Joo-hook simply wondered where this crazy woman had appeared from. He asked her directly why she was intruding, thinking she despised him. His question left her baffled. He rephrased his words, asking if she wasn't still angry that he'd embarrassed her. The teacher dismissed it entirely. She had always believed there was only one way to kill monsters. But he had shattered her worldview. She demanded to know everything, right there and then. She even offered him a position as her assistant. He flatly refused, explaining he had to submit his departure form. The obsessive woman tried every method to convince him, but failed. The two of them left, leaving the small, quiet girl standing there all alone. She replayed the teacher's words in her mind, feeling utterly lost. Taking a shaky breath, she steeled herself. She decided to let it go, thinking she didn't need this kind of humiliation. The next day, Kim Joo-hook stood in awe of the sight before him. A vast, sprawling market stretched out as far as the eye could see, bringing the chapter to a close. Back inside the massive Valhalla dormitory, Kim Joo-hook sat before his high-end gaming PC. Grace asked what he was searching for on his phone. He replied coolly that it was just information for his trip the next day. The main character needed a place to sell the treasures he'd found in the vault, and this seemed like the perfect spot. If the information was correct, then he had truly found it. A virtual black market existed on his phone. For a small entry fee, one could trade almost anything in this dangerous, dark web-like marketplace. The reason such an impossible marketplace could exist was because its creator was a guardian constellation, known as the Secret Ruler. Because of this divine backing, even high rankers used it openly. And despite being completely illegal, no government on Earth dared to interfere. That was how he managed to find an entry point so easily. After reading a few online tutorials, Kim Joo-hook decided to use it himself. He soon spotted a link hidden in a post's comment section. But suddenly, his phone buzzed with messages from the little girl. Choi Ain. It was a series of crying bunny emojis. She informed him she would miss the next day's training, to which he replied that he also had plans. Kim Joo-hook sent a few laughing emojis in between his messages. Cho Ain was left utterly baffled by his words. He quickly clarified he was only wishing her a safe journey. He also begged her to stop with the emoji overload. While the virtual bunnies were a mystery, Kim Joo-hook refocused on his true objective, securing the location. With a decisive tap, he clicked on a suspicious link that appeared on his screen. Soon after, he slipped into the shadows of the night, dressed in all black with a deep hood concealing his face. The coordinates pointed to a nearby location, what looked like a derelict, old-fashioned cafe. The entrance loomed right before him. Its wooden door creaked with age, revealing a chaotic mess inside. Kim Joo-hook pushed open the gates, stepping cautiously into the darkness. His instructions were simple: enter and head for the right corner. The designated spot was just a few steps away. He pushed open a gray door with his bare hand, slowly revealing another hidden room. And what he saw before him was breathtaking. This was it. The grand black market in all its glory. Night had already fallen, and the moon cast an ethereal glow from the dark sky. Yet, for Kim Joo-hook, this entire scene felt strangely familiar. It was his first visit, but the atmosphere resonated deep within him. The purple sky, the clouds, the moon. It was the same night he'd witnessed 300 years ago. Suddenly, a man appeared beside him, asking with a grin if this was his first time. The man wore a cheerful expression, dressed in black with stylish bangs. Kim Joo-hook immediately recognized the familiar leather jacket from the online posts. This had to be the employee. The man confirmed it and began explaining the rules of the marketplace. But the protagonist already knew the basics. He simply handed over a thick wad of cash, for which the guide thanked him profusely. With the transaction complete, Kim Joo-hook's mind raced, calculating the money he'd spent versus the fortune he was about to make. He had a critical question for the man in black. He needed to know the best place to sell the mountain of jewels he possessed. But he wasn't here for an auction, as the guide assumed. He needed to liquidate them, and fast. The guide understood immediately, pointing him toward the market in the 3rd district, a place where merchants would buy practically anything. Kim Joo-hook pressed further, asking for the most trustworthy merchant there. The man didn't hesitate. The name he was looking for was Morris, a legend known for offering the best prices.
The man in black gave him precise directions to the 3rd district, earning the young visitor's sincere gratitude. But before he left, the guide offered one final piece of advice. He strongly recommended Kim Joo-hyuk wear a mask. He explained that given the illicit nature of the goods traded here, everyone concealed their identity. And with that, he presented a simple mask as a complimentary gift. Kim Joo-hyuk accepted it with a deep bow of thanks. The man in black wished him well as he disappeared into the crowds of the Grand Black Market's 3rd district. A figure in a stark white mask was seen hunched over, observing a flawless, glittering diamond. Kim Joo-hyuk approached without hesitation, confirming his identity. This was him, the real Morris, the man known for his fair prices. The protagonist got straight to the point, stating he had some valuable items he wished to sell. Morris replied that it all depended on the merchandise. If it was simple gold or jewels, the appraisal would be swift and easy. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately began to unload his large backpack. In a moment, a heavy-looking black sack appeared in his hands. He declared his intention to sell everything inside. Morris's curiosity was piqued. What could be in there?
He started his evaluation with a single ring from the bag, but as he examined it, his professional calm shattered, replaced by pure shock.
This ring? It was a rare artifact from the legendary era of destruction. From any angle, it was undeniably an ancient and priceless treasure. Morris's mind reeled. Were the other items just like this one? He peered into the bag, where countless other objects pulsed with an ancient light. The man in the white mask confirmed his suspicion they were all from that same forgotten era. Suddenly, a calm voice cut through his shock, snapping him back to reality. It was Kim Joo-hyuk asking a simple question. So, how much will you offer for the lot? The question left the veteran merchant speechless. He couldn't comprehend it. How could a boy this young have acquired a hoard of precious ancient artifacts? He had to ask, "Where did you get these things?" The boy's response was cold and sharp, reminding him that such questions are forbidden here. Morris, the man of fair prices, instantly recoiled, apologizing for his grave error. He cursed his mistake, one that could have ruined his hard-earned reputation. He confessed that he couldn't possibly name a price for such a collection. These weren't mere goods, they were relics from the era of destruction. He simply didn't have the capital to purchase them all. Kim Joo-hyuk considered this, then asked where he could possibly go to get what they were truly worth. Morris directed him toward the towering auction house down the main thoroughfare. The protagonist had one last question. How long would an auction take? Morris replied it would be a wait of 2 to 3 weeks, as the booking schedule was packed, making the entire process agonizingly slow. With his questions answered, Kim Joo-hyuk learned he'd have to return to the market himself. He sighed, bogged down by frustrating procedures, and cut straight to the point. What was the auction estimate for his items? This gave Mr. Morris pause. He thoughtfully reached for his phone. The number he displayed on the screen left the young man utterly stunned. Joo-hyuk's mind reeled at the sheer number of zeros. He knew they were valuable, but this was beyond anything he'd imagined. He then asked what fraction of that value Morris could even afford. The merchant admitted that even if he sold everything he owned, he'd only have about 3/4 of the total. A bit bewildered, Kim Joo-hyuk asked if that was really true. Then, he made a snap decision he would accept that amount right now. The man in the white mask was left completely floored, speechless and bewildered. You see, artifacts from the era of destruction held immense value for more than just their age. Their true worth came from the constellations, beings who only appeared after that era, and who reacted powerfully to these ancient items. Morris knew that with one of these artifacts, even a powerless human could form a contract with a mighty constellation. And the alchemist's zone was still active. He held up a shimmering magical ring. Turning it between his fingers, a second inspection left him breathless. The flow of mana within the accessory was perfect. The magic from the end of the Age of Destruction was still sealed inside, vibrant and potent. He was ecstatic. To have bought 8 artifacts from that legendary era for such a steal? Morris snatched the small bag holding his treasures. As he secured the jewels inside, he thought to himself that this was truly his lucky day. But suddenly, a chilling presence filled the room. His eyes shot wide with terror. Before him stood a figure cloaked in black, his face hidden by a terrifying black mask. And just like that, the merchant's triumphant moment was cut short. Elsewhere, a massive door loomed into view. With all his might, Kim Joo-hyuk pushed it open. He immediately tore the mask from his face. It was so suffocating he thought he might die wearing it. The room beyond reminded him of the cafe from his starting point. He wasted no time, pulling out his phone to check his bank account. With a single sale, all his financial worries had vanished. He celebrated the fortune he'd made from those 8 rings. Kim Joo-hyuk felt a wave of pure happiness. And with so many more items still in storage, he knew his problems were over for good. Just then, a strange notification appeared on his screen. An unknown number was calling. Without a second thought, he answered.
A woman's voice on the other end immediately invited him to a meal.
He demanded to know how she got his number, but she quickly explained she was a teacher from Valhalla. Before he could even protest, she rattled off the location for their dinner and hung up, leaving him completely baffled and a little annoyed. Seeing as he had nothing better to do, Kim Joo-hyuk decided he might as well go. After all, the strange girl was offering to buy him a free meal. And so concluded this very bizarre invitation. Meanwhile, we return to the man in black. Morris demanded to know why he was here. The man simply questioned if their relationship was truly on such bad terms. Flustered, Morris explained that a common merchant couldn't just casually speak with the owner of the market, even if they had met a few times. That's right. The man standing before him was the market owner himself, known only as the Black Cat. He commented that he rather admired the merchant's audacity. Morris repeated his question, his voice trembling slightly. Why was the Black Cat here? The owner replied that it was nothing major. He just found it strange that Morris was participating in the auction after such a long absence. Morris scoffed, noting that the auction's anonymous registration clearly had its flaws. The Black Cat explained that as the true owner of the market was a constellation, he could access any information he wished, and he wanted to see the items Morris had listed. Morris agreed without protest, but a seed of doubt was planted. Why was the Black Cat so interested? This was the first time he'd ever intervened like this. He tossed the small bag onto the table. As the items from the era of destruction clattered out, the Black Cat fell into a deep, silent contemplation. He finally spoke, commenting on the artifact's true value, leaving Morris completely lost as to what he meant.
Suddenly, a system panel flared into existence before him, declaring that his patron constellation was watching in utter shock.
The message flashed again and again, urgent and overwhelming. In that instant, the Black Cat understood. His constellation didn't just want that ring, it desired it with every fiber of its being. And so, this chapter comes to a close, in another place entirely. At a restaurant called Valhalla, a fork twirls a bite of delicious-looking pasta, slowly lifting it to someone's mouth. The instructor takes a slow, deliberate bite. A look of pure bliss crosses her face, declaring the food absolutely divine. But her expression shifts to confusion. Why isn't Kim Joo-hyuk eating a single bite? He simply replies, he's marveling that a place like this even exists inside Valhalla. She explains Valhalla has more than just cafeterias and staff restaurants. But this trivial information fails to capture his interest in the slightest. He cuts straight to the point. Why did she summon him here for a moment? She's caught completely off guard. Then, she drops the proposal to become her official assistant. His answer? An immediate and firm no. She urges him not to be so hasty. The benefits of being her intern are immense. She practically begs him to just hear her out, as if she knew this was coming. A flicker of interest appears in his eyes. He asks her to name these so-called benefits. She starts with the obvious bait, a full scholarship and generous financial aid, but his expression remains completely unmoved. Next, she dangles a prestigious opportunity, the chance to co-author a paper with her on his 3 revolutionary monster attack types. If published, his name would be immortalized in the World Association of Monster Research. Unimaginable fame and fortune would follow. And still, he couldn't care less. Getting desperate, she offers him more days off, a break from the tiresome school routine. Yet Kim Joo-hyuk remains a stone wall, utterly unimpressed. The teacher's mind races, searching for the one offer he can't refuse. She then tries to stroke his massive ego, a tactic that fails spectacularly, frustration boiling over. She tries to command him, "You will become my assistant." His answer is the same, "I refuse." In his mind, her offers are pathetic, holding no real value for someone like him. He has only one mission on his mind right now, reaching the heart of the great forest. And even with her as his guide, passing the performance evaluation would be a monumental task. The main character then delivers the final blow, a checkmate in their war of words. "I have no desire to be an assistant or write papers." Her face contorts with fury. Seeing her defeat, she abruptly changes tactics. "Then let's make a trade," she proposes. She offers a piece of valuable information in exchange for the secrets behind his legendary attack patterns. This finally piques his interest. And the subject of this juicy gossip, none other than Choi Aaron. He scoffs, his interest vanishing. He was only helping that girl out of convenience. But then the teacher drops a bombshell: Choi Aaron might be disowned by her family. For a moment, he's stunned into silence. He immediately tries to make his exit, pushing his teacher to the brink of desperation. He states coldly that the meal is over, and her offers held no appeal. Therefore, there's no reason to stay. Rage flashes across the teacher's face. She expected her end of the bargain. He tries to brush it off, but the information had already been planted. Kim Joo-hyuk pauses, a curious glint in his eye. "May I ask you something?" he says. He questions her dual personality, so strict and commanding in the classroom, yet so childish and immature right now. She explains her subject is a matter of life and death. Mysterious monsters are no laughing matter. And a single moment of carelessness could drastically lower her students' survival rates. And because her students are still naive, her strictness is an absolute necessity. He dismisses it as a simple ideology, failing to see the solemn duty of a true educator. He scoffs, his arrogance on full display. Just as he turns to leave for good, the teacher calls his name one last time. She makes one final, desperate plea for information, but her efforts are futile. And so, this tense, almost comical negotiation finally comes to an end. Meanwhile, in Sejong, within the hallowed halls of the Chojin family temple, a powerful man sits before two young figures. The guild leader, Choi Jon-seok, had summoned them to confirm their resolve before the fateful classification test. The family's very reputation was on the line. The first was a combat leader from the True History Guild, and the eldest son of the main family, Cho Jin-jin. The second, also of the Chojin bloodline, was the one known as Choi Rin. The leader lays out the stakes. Pass the test, and you will earn the right to form a contract with Cheonmu, one of the family's sacred relics, a symbol of the true successor. However, the price of failure is absolute. They would be severed from the family tree, cast out and disowned with no second chances. Choi Jon-seok's gaze hardens. Are you truly prepared for this? The young man's answer is immediate. I am. Choi Rin echoes his resolve without a moment's hesitation. The leader's piercing gaze falls upon them both, studying their unwavering determination. Lost in thought for a moment, he makes his decision. It was time to give them the final details. He informs them the test is in 3 weeks. For now, they are dismissed. With a respectful bow, the two turn and walk silently toward the exit. But suddenly, Cho Jin-jin breaks the silence. Did you happen to read the stars? She looks at him, puzzled by the cryptic question. He clarifies his meaning. Did you see Father's reaction the moment you accepted the challenge? She says nothing, her mind replaying that very moment. Model. Her brother sneered, noting Choi Arn's desperate ambition to not only lead the family, but to prove she was a true daughter. His venomous words struck a nerve. A fire ignited in her eyes. But he only mocked her further, laughing at her threatening glare and pathetic chances in the upcoming trial.
Chin Jin's taunts cut deeper. He scoffed that without even
blessing from a constellation. She was nothing. A mere insect before him in his powerful foreign contract. To hear such cruelty from her own blood. The words shattered her heart. He told her to just give up and live as a parasite on the family's riches. But that path, he warned, would come at a devastating price. He would see her again in exactly 3 weeks. And with that, he vanished, leaving the young girl utterly alone and vulnerable. But then, a memory surfaced. A vision of a woman from her past. This woman urged her to seize the position of family head, promising that with that power, true freedom would finally be hers. Her eyes snapped open. The fear was gone. In its place was a burning resolve, a determination to conquer whatever trials lay ahead. Meanwhile, in classroom 1A, students hung on the teacher's every word, all except for Kim Joo-hyuk, who was lost in his own world. He was amused that Brace was actually stressing over something as trivial as the school's midterm exams. Our main character rarely pays attention in class, so the teacher's lecture was just background noise to him. The stern-faced instructor reminded them of the grim reality of Valhalla's midterm exams. The stakes were absolute. The lowest-scoring students faced immediate expulsion, so they had to get serious. He warned them to prepare for everything, the written tests and the practical combat trials, or face the consequences. For Kim Joo-hyuk, the practical test was a joke. He was a master. But the theoretical exam, that was his real weak point. He had to stay enrolled in this academy, no matter what. It was his only
path to the center of the Great Forest, a place he still didn't know how to reach. Without a second thought, he contacted Bart, who answered instantly.
He cut straight to the point, asking if Bart had already taken these classes. The answer was yes. So Kim Joo-hyuk made a bold declaration Bart would take the test in his place, leaving his friend completely baffled. His own job would be simple, just watch his opponent's answers to spot any errors. Bart protested. This felt like cheating, like having a proxy take the exam for him. But Kim Joo-hyuk just brushed it off, telling him to trust the plan and just do it. Just then, the professor dismissed the class for the day, and the students replied in unison, their lesson over. Kim Joo-hyuk was the first to pack his bag, ready to bolt. But as he headed for the door, a voice called out his name. He turned, wondering what the young girl wanted. She asked a single question. Were they still training today? He confirmed they were curious about her eagerness. Her answer was simple. She didn't want to stop. Her intensity left him slightly taken aback.
An idea sparked in his mind. It was time to teach her real swordsmanship, since she probably didn't even know the basics of handling a blade.
He clarified that it wasn't about fancy fencing or martial arts. He would teach her the true way to wield a weapon. It was long past time she learned to master the sword she carried. He ordered her to meet him at the academy's training hall. She agreed without hesitation, bringing Chapter 17 to a close. Later, at the training hall, Kim Joo-hyuk posed a question to Choi. Oran, How long had it been since she held her sword? She admitted it had been a day and a half since she'd focused on strength training. He realized instantly what this meant. Before this, she had practiced with it every single day. "Show me," he commanded. With a deep breath and solemn focus, she gripped the hilt and drew the blade. He began to correct her form, teaching her a professional's grip for using the weapon. She struggled at first, her fingers fumbling, especially the placement of her ring and pinky. But the moment her hands and wrists finally aligned perfectly, something incredible happened. She had no idea what was going on, but a beautiful light began to emanate from the blade. It was the sword's own mana, awakened. She hadn't even tried to infuse it with magic, yet the sword felt more stable than ever. That's when Kim Joo-hyuk gave his next command. "Attack me with everything you've got." Without a moment's hesitation, she complied. He drew his own blade, its steel humming in the air as he faced his student. She announced her attack was beginning. She charged, rushing toward her master. But as she moved, she felt it. An unnatural quickness in her own steps. But with a casual flick of his wrist, Kim Joo-hyuk effortlessly parried her strike. He acknowledged her speed had improved dramatically, but the master's eye saw a flaw. He warned her not to waste unnecessary magic on her footwork. She nodded, taking his wisdom to heart. Once more, she raised her beautiful blade, planting her feet firmly on the ground as she focused all her will. Then she exploded forward, delivering a swift and perfectly calculated strike toward her professor.
Kim Joo-hyuk praised her explosive charge, but noted a subtle weakness when she stopped. She needed to rotate her body just a little more.
Choi-yeon understood his instructions for refining her attack. With a sharp command, he urged her to come at him again, without mercy. "Okay," she replied without a shred of hesitation. She immediately put his teachings into practice, unleashing a flurry of strikes aimed at Kim Joo-hyuk's chest.
Her attacks were a blur of motion, the sword leaving shimmering trails of light in the air.
But the protagonist weaved through the onslaught with masterful grace, her every blow striking nothing but the hard ground. Their eyes locked for a brief, intense moment. Choi Erin knew this was exactly what she needed, her resolve hardening as she faced her opponent. Determined not to yield, she was leagues stronger now, all thanks to Kim. Joo-hyuk's incredible training, he, in turn, faced her assault with the calm and serenity of a mountain in a storm. The duel reached a fever pitch as their swords met in a deafening clash, bringing the tense and fruitful chapter to a close.
As the sun began to set over the grand school of Valhalla, the scene shifted back to the training room, where Choya Ronan and Kim Joo-hyuk were still locked in their grueling practice.
The young girl was breathing heavily now, exhaustion finally setting in. Her trainer announced that an hour had passed and it was time to end the session for the day, a decision she readily accepted. The warrior in the pink outfit collapsed to the floor, gasping for breath, the battle's toll evident on her face.
She watched her trainer sheath his sword with fluid grace. His mastery was sharper than ever, worlds beyond what he'd shown at the opening ceremony. But a single frustrating thought remained. She hadn't managed to land a single hit on Kim Joo-hyuk, even after he had agreed to teach her his sword technique. After processing this bitter pill, she called out to him, asking for another duel at the next possible opportunity. Her sudden and intense request left him slightly bewildered.
He considered it. Dueling Charon was not only useful, but it was also a joy to teach someone so talented and hardworking. He had sensed her natural affinity for his sword style during the entrance ceremony, even as she struggled for breath while he remained untouched. In a way, her innate talent was helping him reawaken his own dormant senses and techniques. 300 years ago, she would have been the perfect disciple. "So, one more time," Choi Erin pressed again. Kim Joo-hyuk paused, a playful glint in his eyes. He decided to tease her, saying he had no desire to fight again. Choi Erin simply agreed, which left her trainer a bit disappointed by her quick surrender. She explained that he was absolutely right. She realized that if she truly absorbed Kim Joo's lessons, she would become immeasurably stronger. A little let down by her mature answer, he simply replied that it was fine, and that training was officially over. Choi Erin bowed, promising to see him next time, and he nodded in return, bringing the chapter's scenes to an end. We are now transported to the Grand Valhalla Stadium. It was Yoo Soo-hyen's first time here since the opening ceremony. Oh Se-hyuk was stunned by how many first-year students were present. Choi Erin, however, observed the entire scene in complete and utter silence. Kim Joo-hyuk looked around, wondering why everyone had been gathered in this place. Grace reminded him that the teacher had mentioned this 2 weeks ago, but the memory was completely lost on him. Suddenly, the head instructor's voice boomed, demanding attention. He was about to announce Valhalla's midterm exams. The first practical evaluation was a dungeon raid.
All students were to form groups to enter an artificial dungeon that was being constructed right before their very eyes.
As the students buzzed with anticipation, the senior instructor announced they were free to form parties of up to 8 members. The evaluation would be judged solely on the level of each student's contribution during the raid. And there was one very important rule for elimination. If their time ran out, the test would end immediately. The senior instructor also made it clear the dungeon's difficulty was ranked F+, Then, he gave the order to begin the exam at once. A massive timer appeared in the air and began to count down. A wave of panic and desperation to form teams swept through the Valhalla students. The teacher and senior instructor watched the chaos unfold, but they knew there was a hidden catch to this entire test. Yoon So-yen declared their dealer was a liability, already searching for a replacement. The boys' protests that he could handle it were utterly ignored. She didn't need someone better than herself, just someone who wouldn't drag them down. 5 hours in a low-level dungeon was a joke for 8 people. What truly mattered was contribution, and a lean 6-member squad with perfect synergy was far more efficient.
"We're starting now," she commanded, her mind already calculating how to dominate this test and stand out from the rest.
The senior instructor nodded in approval. As expected, a 5th-generation prodigy understood the exam's hidden objective. While the common students were completely clueless, they would normally form massive 20-person raids or standard 8-member teams. But an unbalanced party would only lead to internal conflict, dooming them to one of 3 terrible fates. After a moment of consideration, the instructor turned to his subordinate. "In 30 minutes, the students will enter the dungeon. Prepare the evaluation." The teacher affirmed the command without question. Amid the chaos, Kim Joo-hook stood perfectly still, wondering if the evaluation had already started for those inside. The entire situation felt strange and confusing. He then noticed Chia-rin, standing alone, quiet and withdrawn.
A quick glance told him everything. She hadn't entered the dungeon yet.
He approached her directly. "What are you planning to do? Everyone else is already inside that death trap." Chia-rin replied without hesitation. "I will do as you command, Kim Joo-hyuk." Her answer left him slightly baffled. He recalled how she had been following his every word like a sacred vow since their last training session. Finally, Kim Joo-hyuk made his decision. "I'm going in, alone. Then I will also enter alone," she declared. But her resolve meant little to him. This entire dungeon felt like a walk in the park. He turned and left without another word. She stood there in silence, her expression unreadable. Nearby, a few boys started whispering about the lone girl. Cho-ain, one of them, feeling bold, decided to make his move, approaching her with a confident smile. He offered her a spot in his group with a syrupy sweet invitation, but she simply apologized. "Thank you, but I'm going in alone." A flat rejection. The boy tried to reason with her, warning that she'd be eliminated in an instant. "I'll be fine," Chia-rin responded calmly. Kim Joo-hook said it wasn't difficult. Her words left the boy stunned and frustrated, but his advice was useless. She walked past him and into the dungeon alone, bringing this chapter to a close. Inside the Valhalla Stadium, every student had entered their designated dungeons with their chosen teams. From the observation room, their every move was being monitored. The professor watched the screens, his expression focused and unmoving. Suddenly, a monster erupted into view. In the next moment, Boon-young-yoon had snatched 2 precious points, but Ba Yi was faster, scoring 1 more point than him. Meanwhile, Bun Jin-soo had only managed to claim a single point. The senior instructor observed the unfolding battles, his gaze sharp and serious. The professor mused that everything was proceeding as planned. The difficult scoring system was designed to test them, evaluating their speed and precision without a single error. Back in his glory days, they called Lee Sang-chul the Clear Master, a legendary contractor with a 99% success rate. The professor knew that this man understood the art of the dungeon raid better than anyone alive, which is what made his evaluations so ruthlessly effective. He had earned every ounce of his legendary reputation. His eyes scanned the monitors, taking in the chaos of the battlefield. This was an excellent year. Indeed, the 5th-generation students were a cut above the rest. But among them was one truly exceptional talent, the impressive and fearless Yoon So-yeon. At that very moment, she was barking out commands, directing her team's positioning and attacks with flawless precision. They were locked in a desperate battle, as monstrous beings swarmed them from all sides. "The front line cannot fall," Yoon So-yeon shouted over the din of battle. "Archers, fire at will." The beast roared in agony as arrows rained down upon it, just as Yoon So-yeon closed in for the kill. With a series of precise and powerful strikes, she finished it. The monster dissolved into holographic light, its data vanishing from the simulation. Lee Sang-chul watched, impressed. It was a textbook dungeon assault. Yoon So-yen had perfectly assigned roles, creating a rock-solid formation that allowed them to rack up points with frightening efficiency. At this rate, as long as she aced the bi-monthly exams, it was only a matter of time before she reclaimed her top spot. After all, if it hadn't been for Kim Joo-hyuk's shocking appearance at the entrance ceremony, her perfect record would have remained untarnished. With that thought, Lee Sang-chul decided to check on the story's main character and see how he was faring in the test. But as he pulled up the data, a glaring red error message flashed across the screen. Subject? Not found. This baffled the senior instructor. The search system should have been able to find any student inside the dungeon instantly. A knot of tension formed in his gut. Worried, he immediately pulled up the list of completed artificial dungeons for the bi-monthly exam. His eyes widened. Kim Joo-hyuk had cleared the test in a mere 23 minutes and 32 seconds. Seizing the #1 rank on the practical leaderboard, Liang Chil was stunned. The boy had done it all, without a party, completely on his own. But the truly shocking part was the time. Just 23 minutes and 32 seconds. Still, a flicker of doubt remained. The instructor decided to review the footage, questioning how a 17-year-old student could possess such capabilities. The recording materialized on the control panel, and there he was, Kim Joo-hyuk, standing calmly, sword in hand. He radiated a profound sense of peace in the face of an overwhelming trial. Before him swarmed a legion of monstrous creatures. Their very presence meant to crush his spirit and erase him. But the boy simply stretched, slow and deliberate, before launching himself like an arrow toward those grotesque abominations. They watched him approach, their eyes blazing with fury, roaring to shatter his will. Yet Kim Joo-hyuk's calm never broke. His expression was a mask of cold anger, his resolve to complete his mission absolute. There was no hesitation. He unleashed a storm of precise, devastating strikes against the monsters, enraging the few that remained standing. He carved through the wild goblins as if they were nothing more than paper. His focus was unshakable, his gaze fixed only on his goal. He now faced two enormous, ferocious foes. They roared, a sound meant to inspire terror. But Kim Joo-hyuk simply surged forward, delivering a perfect strike that ended them both. Farewell. Orcs. Mission after mission was cleared in record time, leaving his superiors utterly astonished and at a loss for words. But a final target remained on the battlefield. He stood before the colossal, monstrous being, not a single word passing his lips. Lee Sang-chu, watching the feed, recalled that this enhanced golem was designed to challenge a full party of 8 students for the midterm. The golem was a mountain of stone and fury, without a single weakness. And in that moment, Kim Joo-hyuk looked thrilled to face it. He unleashed a single, perfect blow to the special golem's chest. It shattered with impossible ease, its simulated form dissolving into light. Seeing this, Lee Sang-chul was no longer just impressed. He was in awe. He knew instantly who deserved first place. In this midterm exam, the victor was undeniably Kim Joo-hyuk. And so, this chapter of the tale comes to a close. A different group stumbled out of the dungeon, completely drained and beaten down from the trials within. Another team emerged, much more lively, their faces flush with victory. But Yoya's expression was sour, her mood clearly ruined. The blonde-haired boy beside her also looked furious. While Choi Aaron stood silently, taking it all in, Kim Joo-hyuk was there as well, as the midterm exams finally concluded. The scene then cuts to the teacher's lounge, far from the Valhalla Stadium. An instructor was staring intently at the student ranking table for the midterm exams. A look of pure shock and disbelief spread across his face as he processed what he was seeing on the tablet. He rushed over to Lee Sang-chu, informing him that the official results had just been posted. He sputtered that the outcome was unthinkable. Kim Joo-hyuk had somehow taken the #1 rank. Sang-chu replied that the results were indeed surprising. Liang Chu had expected the boy to claim first place, but to clear the dungeon solo, without a single scratch. That was on another level entirely. If a talent like him matured and entered the hunter industry, South Korea could finally reclaim its title as the world's #1. The instructor remembered that this honor was reserved for the strongest professional hunter in the entire world. Lee Sang-chul's excitement was palpable. He declared it had been far too long since so many geniuses had appeared at once. He then hinted there was another surprise in this exam. The other teacher guessed it must be the quiet girl. Choi Aaron. Kim Joo-hyuk's time was monstrous, but they never expected her to rank higher than the prodigy. Yu Hyun. Liang Shu explained what happened. Choi Aaron had decided to challenge the dungeon all by herself, just like our protagonist. She cleared it in an incredibly short time, and though she emerged injured, she had successfully conquered the dungeon. The senior instructor knew she was a quiet and diligent student, but he never imagined she possessed the hidden strength to finish such a grueling challenge alone. If the exam had been based only on teamwork, Yu Hyun would have scored the highest. But on pure individual merit, Kim Joo-hyuk and Choi Aaron were superior. Despite these incredible results, Lee Sang-chu would never encourage other students to follow their example. They both agreed it was a feat that ordinary trainees could never hope to accomplish. And the teacher's thoughts kept drifting back to Choi Aaron. He remembered her from his days as a guild executive. Her aura was weak back then. Why she chose to face that dungeon alone remained a chilling mystery. The teacher suspected the reason could be Kim Joo-hyuk, but he couldn't bring himself to believe such an outlandish thought. Shaking his head, he pushed the suspicions aside and focused on preparing the students' grades. The next day, every student gathered around the school board, their eyes scanning the newly posted rankings. The list displayed the results for the entire first year. And standing at the absolute top, in first place, was Kim Joo-hyuk. Watching from a distance were Rockdell Ventrick and his assistant, Julia DePalis, their faces contorted in pure fury. He turned to her, his voice low and dangerous. "Is Desire in South Korea?" She confirmed that he was. "Get him on the line," Rockdell commanded, "and prepare to leave immediately." With those words, a dark plot began to unfold. In the sprawling city of Seoul, night fell, casting a glow over the Jamsil district. Rockdell Ventrick and Julia DePalis arrived calmly at their destination, a high-end restaurant. A gruff voice greeted him with open disrespect. It was Desire Ventrick, and it had been far too long since they last met face-to-face. Rockdell sat down at the table with his associate. The man across from him ate like a classless, savage animal. Dressed in black, Rockdell watched with cold disgust and contempt. Finally, Desire Ventrick broke the silence. "So," he began, "what has our target, Kim Joo-huk, been up to?" "Nothing of consequence," Rockdell sneered. "He acts like an arrogant fool, full of himself. His humble origins have caused us considerable embarrassment, an insult for which he must pay." Desire's eyes glinted. "So I can kill him in one shot?" Rockdell smirked. "The decision is entirely in your hands." The brute let out a grim chuckle. "Then I need to prepare the council properly." His statement left the refined Rockdell completely baffled. Suddenly, Desire jabbed a finger in someone's direction. He was pointing directly at Julia DePalis. "Because of her," he growled. "We've already had a major conflict with that family." Desire admitted he wasn't sure if it was because of their numbers, but he'd already silenced a few who spread the rumors too far. "But the Valhalla bastards are different," he continued. "Their power isn't affected by a little chaos." Understanding dawned on Rockdell's face. "Don't worry," Rockdell promised. "I'll arrange the perfect scenario for you. You'll have nothing to fear." The deal was struck. For this mission, Desire demanded a handsome reward, and with that, their dark pact was sealed. A week passed. Brace found Kim Joo-huk filing a request to leave the school. Again. Brace was completely confused, but our protagonist simply explained he had earned permission for another exit. "If you perform well on an exam," he stated, "you're granted another chance to leave." Kim Joo-huk confirmed it was true, unwilling to miss the opportunity his high grades afforded him. "So, where are you headed this time?" Brace asked. As the scene drew to a close, the scenery changed, shifting to the province of Suwon. Kim Joo-huk was closing in on his destination. Checking the map on his phone, he was close. Suddenly, an intimidating voice called out his name. It was Desire Ventrick, a terrifying look burning in his eyes. "It's a pleasure to finally meet you," he said with a cruel smile. As that chapter ended with a chilling cliffhanger, the plot shifts to the market in Area 7. From a rooftop high above, the boss known as Black Cat observed his domain. He was intensely focused, his identity hidden behind a menacing black mask. Suddenly, his eyes widened. Something had put him on high alert. A message from the constellation on the other side. "When will the ring be in our hands?" Black Cat replied calmly. "It is already en route. It will pass through normal procedures before arriving via the portal." The response from the ruler was sharp and unexpected. "You are completely insane." Black Cat was baffled. What was going on at their request? He had investigated the item to confirm if it was truly an artifact from the era of destruction. But he had never expected a reaction like this. Just then, a shimmering sound beside him broke his concentration. A black box materialized through the magical portal. It had arrived. A sigh of relief. Black Cat thought its arrival would finally appease the anxious constellation. He began to pry the box open, and soon, a ring pulsing with immense magic was revealed. He immediately informed the constellation of its arrival. But there was only silence. He was left in suspense. Then, a new message flashed before him. "We are present." The message began to repeat, over and over, uncontrollably. As the scene cut to black, back in the province of Suwon, the confrontation continued. "Who are you?" Kim Joo-huk demanded. The hulking man just scoffed. "You don't need to know that." Kim Joo-huk's eyes narrowed. "You must want something from me." He was right, of course. Why else would they meet on such a remote, desolate mountain? Our protagonist cut to the chase. "Is your intention to kill me?" The man's smile was terrifying. "Yes." The answer was immediate and certain. "And it's not just your good intuition talking." The boy's intentions were as clear as day. Kim Joo-hyuk had seen through him days ago. Hearing those words, Desire Ventrick's composure shattered. "For the top ranker in Valhalla," he snarled. "You're nothing but a foolish, petty child." With a roar, he launched himself forward. "Don't you dare disappoint me." He gathered an immense destructive power into his fist, but with breathtaking grace. Kim Joo-huk sidestepped the attack, letting his opponent slam full force into a nearby tree. A pained groan escaped the arrogant fighter's lips. His fist had pulverized the thick trunk, splitting the ancient wood in two as it crashed to the forest floor. Desire sneered. You were lucky to dodge that. One hit, and you would have been history. Kim Joo-hyuk simply scoffed. Too slow. It wasn't luck, but a calculated move. Still, something about this felt off.
This guy's power was the real deal. He was on par with Osuk, maybe even stronger.
Taking a hit like that with his current body was suicide. His only path to victory was a simple one. Without warning, Kim Joo-hyuk turned and bolted. His sudden retreat left his enemy stunned and confused, forcing the boy to give chase. For a warrior in Kim Joo's position, retreating was the smartest play. Even Dizzer had to admit it. Stand and fight, and he would have been beaten to a pulp. But the relentless pursuer wouldn't let him go. Abruptly, Kim Joo-hyuk halted his sprint. "Are you even using that rotten brain of yours?" he taunted. Dizzer's eyes widened in shock. How did he get so close? He never even saw the punch coming until it filled his vision. A devastating blow slammed squarely into his face. The force sent him flying like a cannonball, crashing hard into the dirt in a world of blinding pain.
When he finally pried his eyes open, he was greeted by a terrifying sight.
Kim Joo-hyuk's foot descended, aiming to crush his skull. But with a desperate scramble, he dodged the finishing blow. A second later, and it would have been over for good. The ground itself cratered under the sheer force of the stomp. Kim Joo-hyuk clicked his tongue, impressed. "You're a lucky one," he remarked, dodging that so quickly. His words fueled Dizzer's fury. What did you do to me?" he roared. Kim Joo-hyuk calmly replied with the title his opponent should already know. "I'm Valhalla's #1. This only enraged Dizzer further. Overwhelmed by the chasm in their strength, as the scene faded to black, the story shifts to the past, to the Evendrick family estate. Here, they had exploited the young boy's talent to elevate their family's status. He possessed an innate, miraculous aptitude for elixirs. We see the young boy already consuming one. He could down any potion without side effects, and his parents fed him the most priceless concoctions. Suddenly, the glass slipped, shattering on the floor. At just 16, the boy's power had already surpassed any adult's. His parents saw him as a tool to bring glory to their name. But a darkness was brewing beneath the surface. In this memory, Dizzer stares at his guardians. And in an instant, his expression twists into one of pure, psychotic rage. He refused to be a puppet his entire life. The scene then reveals his father, lying lifeless on the ground. His corpse lay sprawled in the cold mud. With such overwhelming power, Dizzer no longer needed anyone's recognition. His sister then appears, her face a mask of fury. The boy had become a poison within the Evendrick family, and he was finally cast out by one of its members, who was acting as the family head. But Dizzer couldn't care less. Money solved everything, and severing ties only made him more audacious. When Rockdale Evendrick made a request, the reward was massive, but his true interest was in Kim Joo-hyuk, the man who had claimed first place in the entrance exam. For Valhalla, whispers painted him as a madman who cursed out and physically ejected every guild scout that approached him. Messing with a guy like that sounded like fun. For Dizzer, it was all about the entertainment. But there was more to this story. Just who is this guy, he wondered, snapping back from his memories. Dizzer heard Kim Joo-hyuk call out to him. He asked what kind of drugs he'd used to get so strong. After all, elixirs were far beyond the reach of a mere orphan. The question left the boy completely baffled. Then he burst out laughing. The assumption was ridiculous. Was he being accused of using steroids? His opponent clearly saw him as nothing but a drug-abusing cheat. But Dizzer didn't care about the accusations. He demanded again, "How did you get so strong?" Kim Joo-hyuk's answer was simple. He had never touched a drug in his life. His power was forged through nothing but intense, back-breaking training. He scoffed, saying comparing Dizzer Evendrick to Osk was an insult. To a true warrior, likening him to some juiced-up punk. Those words struck a nerve. Dizzer Evendrick exploded, his eyes burning with pure fury at Kim Joo-hyuk. He was too drained to unleash his ultimate technique. But his pride demanded action as he drew his enchanted blade. Kim Joo-hyuk watched, perplexed by this sudden surge of mana. Dizzer, however, felt his power swell to terrifying new levels. He roared a challenge at our hero, vowing that this fight was far from over and escape was impossible. But in a flash, a fist collided with his face, the impact echoing like a thunderclap. As he staggered back, Kim Joo-hyuk sneered, remarking that only a fool waits for his enemy to power up. Dizzer Evendrick was sent flying, his screams of agony tearing through the air. But our hero wasn't finished, closing the distance in an instant and delivering another merciless blow to his opponent's jaw. With each devastating strike, the screams only intensified. Suddenly, Kim Joo-hyuk's cold voice cut through the noise, ordering him to pull himself together. Dizzer, broken and dazed, struggled just to remain conscious. Our protagonist's glare was ice as he growled. "Don't you dare pass out on me now!" He explained that a simple squabble could be forgiven, but Dizzer had revealed a rotten core that could never be overlooked. Still, Kim Joo-hyuk had one last question for him.
With a look of utter despair, Disser could only listen as Kim Joo-hyuk told him to grit his teeth for the pain that was coming next.
Meanwhile, in the lavish dorms of the great Valhalla Academy, inside Rockdale Ventrick's private chambers, the arrogant heir himself was lost in thought. By now, he mused, Disser should have already taken care of Kim Joo-hyuk. Knowing his brother's personality, he had probably even gone for the kill. Cleaning up Disser's messes was a chore. But at least this time, it wasn't on school grounds. A small relief that made the situation feel almost perfect. He suddenly called out for his assistant, Julia DePaul, whose affirmative answer was immediate. His order was sharp and direct. Bring the car around. As always, she complied without a single question. Just then, his phone buzzed with a familiar ringtone. Speak of the devil? It was Disser, calling right on cue. He answered, asking if his brother had finished the job. But the line was met with a chilling, tense silence. Rockdale Ventrick called out his brother's name again, only to be answered by a horrifying groan from the other side.
Unending screams of agony echoed through the phone. Then, a new voice cut through the chaos, sending a shiver down Rockdale's spine.
It was Kim Joo-hyuk. His voice was calm and cold as ice. He casually translated Disser's pained groans, saying his brother wanted Rockdale to burn 2 sticks of incense for him, and to wait, because Kim Joo-hyuk was coming for him next. Concluding his chilling message, our protagonist tried to redial, but was met with the dead click of a disconnected line. The sheer disrespect of hanging up sent a flash of anger through him. He took a breath, considering his next move.
First, what to do with the unconscious lump that was Disser Aventrick, lying broken at his feet.
Far from the brutal scene, in a world of quiet luxury, fragrant tea was poured into a delicate porcelain cup. Julia DePaul informed her master that his tea was served. He offered no response, his silence heavy and absolute. She tried to speak again, but was immediately silenced by his cold, dismissive arrogance. She bowed her head, understanding the unspoken command. After setting down the tea, she departed, leaving Rockdale alone with his thoughts, consumed by his powerful enemy, Kim Joo-hyuk. He could scarcely believe it. Even after the incident with Lyric, he never imagined that boy could actually defeat Disser. So, what now? The mastermind was exposed, and Disser's failure had likely compromised the entire operation. It was only a matter of time before word reached the family, and the consequences would be catastrophic.
Rockdale tried to reassure himself. What could a low-born nobody like Kim Joo-hyuk possibly do against their family?
For now, the blonde-haired heir decided the best course of action was silence. He would lay low and wait for the storm to pass. Back in the depths of the forest, Kim Joo-hyuk continued on his path. He and Brace conversed telepathically, discussing Disser's schemes and how to expose them when the time was right. The man with the strange glasses, ever the pragmatist, asked a simple question. Why didn't you just kill that arrogant fool? Kim Joo-hyuk's reply was firm. The past was the past, and he wouldn't let it dictate his actions now. The matter was closed, but Brace wasn't done yet, and his next question truly caught our hero's attention. He asked about the magic Disser had used earlier, because he swore he had seen that power somewhere before. A shadow of confusion crossed Kim Joo-hyuk's face. Brace admitted that while nothing was confirmed, he'd felt a similar unsettling aura once before. The main character shot back mentally, recalling that 300 years ago. Monsters used that very same dark magic, fueled by sacrificing dogs and cows. Brace scoffed at Kim Joo-hyuk, mocking his inability to distinguish people based on their magical signatures, a skill he clearly lacked, which only fueled his irritation. He then questioned if the sword's hidden side was connected to this power. But Brace's uncertain maybe brought their telepathic exchange to a close. Kim Joo-hyuk turned to the defeated show-off, his voice cold as he demanded to know who sent him. The boy just groaned, unable to form a single word. In that moment, Kim Joo-hyuk realized Darrera Ventrick's jaw was completely dislocated from the earlier beating. Without hesitation, he jammed both thumbs into the boy's mouth, warning him of the searing pain to come before snapping his jaw back into its socket with brutal force. Immediately after, he started another interrogation, asking again who gave Darrera Ventrick the order. The boy's eyes darted, his mind racing in silence. Kim Joo-hyuk's gaze was like ice, pinning him to the spot. Answer me, he pressed. I fixed your jaw for this very reason. His voice dropped, laced with menace. Staying silent is not your best move right now.
Darrera Ventrick nervously asked why he was still holding his fingers. Suddenly, Kim Joo-hyuk made a sharp, cruel motion with the boy's hand.
A horrific scream tore through the air as his fingers were twisted into an unnatural angle, the pain overwhelming. The main character threatened his foe once more, demanding the information he sought. Finally, Darrera Ventrick broke, revealing his own brother had sent him.
A dark realization dawned on Kim Joo-hyuk. He had suspected it was the same person who had caused trouble for him once before.
He immediately demanded every detail about that brute's affiliations, knowing he wasn't a part of Valhalla. Darrera Ventrick answered with uncertainty. then tried to threaten the protagonist, saying he would discover the truth another way. In response to this pathetic mockery, Kim Joo-hook snapped 2 more of the boy's fingers. He then confessed that Dara was of the first species, a mercenary for hire. Kim Joo-hook had heard whispers of such a group before and sneered at him, calling him a common bully paid to do dirty work. Dawara shot back that Kim Joo-hyuk was just a lucky bastard who saw everyone else as trash. He then let slip a crucial detail. The constellation worshipped by the first species was none other than the hidden side of the sword. And he, of course, held a contract with it as well. He boasted that if he'd had just 30 more seconds to gather his magic, the fight would have ended very differently. "You talk too much," Kim Joo-hyuk said coldly. "If you had just given me his name from the start, I would have let you go." Once again, he forced his thumbs into the boy's mouth. "You look much better when you're quiet," he stated, dislocating his jaw once more. Bringing the chapter's brutal interrogation to a close, a storm of messages began flooding Kim Joo-hyuk's phone. As he expected, the public consensus was that these thugs were part of a truly malicious group. Still, the main character was furious, the notes were gone, and Rockdale Ventrick was masterfully painting him as the villain. He pondered how to utterly destroy that arrogant brat's life, deciding it was time to deploy more modern methods. His first move, he had recorded Dara's entire confession. Now, he just needed the perfect place to release it, without a moment's delay. Kim Joo-hook made a call. His teacher answered, completely surprised. She assumed he was finally accepting her offer to be a personal assistant. But he had other plans. He asked if she knew any famous and reputable journalists, ending the chapter on a tense, new precipice. The news spread like wildfire. The Ventrick family, implicated in an assassination attempt on a Valhalla student. Countless reports flooded the media, each one highlighting the shocking and unprecedented nature of the case. Online, people scrambled to summarize the chaos, creating posts that went viral in minutes. And just like that, Kim Joo's name was thrust into the spotlight, directly tied to the scandal. A grim smile touched his lips. He was enjoying this modern style of warfare. Race praised his quick adaptation to this new culture. Kim Joo-hook simply replied that it was the result of endless suffering, of scouring forums and absorbing the news. Through all that effort, Kim Joo-hook had transformed into the person he was today, capable of understanding the new world's rules. However, there was one crucial detail in all of this that his companion didn't seem to understand. Kim Joo-hook explained his true target was only Rockdale Ventrick, but the news had exploded, engulfing the entire family in flames. It seemed the journalists his teacher recommended were titans of the industry, causing the story to detonate with unimaginable force. Already, a podium had been erected for the Ventrick family to make a formal statement. The family's matriarch prepared to face the world, her face a mask of steel under the immense pressure and the flash of countless cameras. First, she offered a sincere apology to the victim and to Valhalla Academy itself. Before delivering the Ventrick family's official stance on the disastrous incident, she declared the attack was an act of rebellion by Desera, a traitor long since excommunicated from the Ventrick family. However, his recorded confession was a desperate gambit, alleging that Rockdale had given the order to escape a crisis of his own making, or so the family had claimed. Therefore, she asserted the Ventrick family had zero involvement. But since a banished member committed the crime, the moral duty to set things right fell upon them. With that, the organization's matriarch vowed to visit the victim and offer a personal apology. She also conceded that Rockdale Ventrick might indeed be connected to the perpetrator in some way. As a result, he would be summoned home, where a formal investigation was scheduled to clear all lingering doubts. After her powerful speech, a storm of camera flashes erupted from the paparazzi. The family head departed instantly, ignoring every question about her planned apology to the victim. Elsewhere, Rockdale Ventrick watched the broadcast on his phone, his face a mask of pure fury as the situation spiraled beyond his control. Suddenly, an incoming call shattered the tense silence. It was his father. He answered without a moment's hesitation. His father's voice was cold iron, ordering Rockdale back to England, effective immediately. It was a command from the entire family, a summons he could not refuse. After the call ended, his rage exploded. He cursed the world, leaving his maid, Julia de Palis, trembling in fear at the shocking display. At the same time, Desiree was being relentlessly pressured to reveal the mastermind. But he held firm, insisting the Ventrick family's story was true. He alone was the architect of the crime. Kim Joo-hook watched, impressed. The boy was swallowing his immense pride, despite his burning hatred for the Ventrick family. The protagonist wondered who would dare apologize to him, as the entire affair had grown deeply uncomfortable. Suddenly, his senses went on high alert. He was already near the faculty office. Class must have ended early. He was unsure who he could possibly ask for help. Leaving those thoughts behind, he made his way to the Valhalla Cafe. The gray-haired teacher was in a suspiciously good mood, but Kim Joo-hyuk met her energy with another sharp no. He already knew she wanted to recruit him as her assistant. It was painfully obvious. She then demanded to know why he'd called, feigning that she was an incredibly busy and overworked woman. She was stunned, her mind racing with the possibility of a romantic meeting, only for Kim Joo-hyuk to immediately shut down her delusions. She paused, considering his disrespectful tone. He simply stated they'd been speaking this way for a while, and she had to agree. Kim Joo-hyuk then clarified the reason for his call wasn't boredom, but gratitude for her help with the journalist. He offered to share some invaluable information on dealing with monsters, an offer that made her eyes light up with excitement.
However, it came with one simple condition. A favor she accepted in a heartbeat: grant him 1 day off from school.
The teacher made one last attempt to convince him to become her assistant, but her efforts were in vain, bringing this part of the chapter to a close. Now, we journey to the North Pacific, aboard the grim criminal transport ship, AL-08.
Desera was caged in a cell. Fury burned within him. He never imagined he'd be tossed onto a ship and treated like cargo, bound for the infamous Tower prison.
It was a fortress rising from the middle of the North Pacific Ocean, a towering prison created by an S-class constellation, a desolate refuge meant to turn all contractors back into ordinary humans. But Desera couldn't care less about any of that. He remained silent for one reason: to keep Rockdale from being cast out of the Ventric family, and to reduce his own sentence by 5 years. 5 measly years meant nothing to him. Suddenly, a deafening clang echoed nearby. A brilliant red light flashed past his cell, too fast to identify. Then, a figure materialized before Desera, ending the chapter on a chilling note. The man who appeared was none other than Cook. Without a word, he plunged a dagger deep into Desera's stomach, staring down at him as he held the blade steady. Cook spat out his wish for Desera's death, declaring that the first species had no need for someone so weak. Desera groaned, the agony from the wound overwhelming him. He collapsed face first onto the cold floor, unable to fight back. Cook just watched him fall, with no intention of offering aid. Now, we return to the Grand Ventric family mansion. The matriarch of the family was radiating a terrifying aura of rage over the recent disaster. Her glacial stare fell upon Rockdale Ventric and his father, Eden Ventric. First, she addressed the arrogant boy by name. He answered immediately.
"What are you going to do now?" she asked, her voice dangerously calm, leaving him utterly confused.
He immediately offered a sincere apology, but she scoffed. An apology was meaningless given the scale of the problem. Words couldn't fix this. The leader then commanded Rockdale to explain, in detail, why he had committed such a malicious act. With no way out, he began to speak. With that part of the conversation over, her piercing gaze settled on him. She understood his desire to deal with Kim Joo-hyuk, and couldn't deny its logic. But a cold fury simmered within her at the pathetic, shallow excuse he offered.
Rockdale claimed he acted to protect the Ventric family's honor, but the leader saw the truth. It was merely his own wounded pride.
And as a result, he had dragged their legendary name through the mud. As the leader silently weighed his punishment, the arrogant boy began to panic, desperation flickering in his eyes. He scrambled to declare he would do anything to restore the family's fallen honor.
But his words were meaningless to her. In her mind, the only way to cleanse their name was to cast him out.
The boy's father immediately contested the idea, arguing such a punishment was far too extreme. She then turned to Eden Ventric. "Then would you prefer to be expelled in his place?" The question left him stunned into a nervous silence.
Inwardly, the leader wished the boy would simply disappear, be it through death or expulsion.
But acting so rashly would be a clear admission that Rockdale Ventric had ordered the assassination attempt. She finally addressed the boy by name. He flinched, immediately dropping to his knees before her. "For now," she announced, "I will not expel you. Return to Valhalla and keep your head down. After your encounter with Kim Joo-hyuk, we will revisit this matter." Relief washed over Rockdale as he offered his deepest thanks. She then warned Eden to keep a tight leash on his mediocre son, reminding him his own position was on the line. He could only agree. With a final, dismissive wave, she commanded them to leave. They obeyed without a single protest. The two departed, their faces etched with humiliation and suppressed rage. Eden ordered his son to lay low, proving he had completely misunderstood the matriarch's true intentions. The reality was simple: Rockdale's expulsion was only a matter of time. With the media watching, they couldn't act immediately. But once the situation cooled down, a shocking revelation would be unleashed upon the world. However, another piece had to be moved into place before that could happen. With no one left to interfere, Rockdale insisted that his father had to assist him with his own scheme. Eden simply urged his son to be cautious, to which he agreed, bringing the chapter's intense drama to a close. Days later, at Valhalla Academy, a new conversation was taking place inside an interview room.
A professor informed Kim Joo-hyuk that the head of the Ventric family herself was coming to offer a personal apology.
But our main character pointed out the hypocrisy, stating the family had already publicly denied any involvement. The professor explained that it was still a wise move to accept, especially since the powerful woman was already on her way to Korea. Kim Joo-hyuk instantly saw their angle, They just wanted to control Rockdale's punishment internally. This whole charade was nothing but an irritation. Following that, the professor began to express not only his own concerns, but also those of instructor Lee So-jun regarding the whole affair.
According to protocol, a Valhalla student had been attacked, and the culprit confessed he was under orders. But there was a major problem.
He couldn't stomach the family's blatant attempts to bury the truth just to protect their own reputation. To ensure the student's safety, either Rockdale or the family leader had to face expulsion. But the professor revealed a grim truth: the Ventrick family were major donors to the academy. He knew Valhalla's funding didn't just come from tuition. For the right price, the school would probably turn a blind eye.
Taking everything in, Kim Joo-hyuk made his decision. He would meet with the head of the family.
The professor was visibly stunned by his response. It was the boy's unwavering composure. Kim Joo-hyuk simply replied, "I've always been this way." At that very moment, a knock echoed at the door. "She has arrived," the professor announced, moving to let her in. He wished them a fruitful conversation and exited, bowing deeply as he welcomed the matriarch with sincere respect, which she returned with a nod. She entered the room slowly, her gaze immediately finding Kim Joo-hyuk. "I am Adelia Ventrich," she said, formally introducing herself. He returned the greeting, and with that, the chapter concluded. The next chapter opens with Adelia Ventrich sitting directly across from Kim Joo-hyuk. For a long moment, the two simply lock eyes. She then approached him about the incident, offering what seemed to be a deep and sincere apology. Kim Joo-hyuk shot back that since Dara was being expelled, everything was settled. She then mentioned hearing rumors that Rodel Ventrichik had also been a thorn in his side, to which he replied, "That was a one-time thing, and it's over." She pointed out that Rodale had nothing to do with this incident, so there would be no public statements from his side. Adelia declared that she and Kim Joo-hyuk needed to have a serious talk about this entire affair. She insisted on creating an official statement, even though the media and public were paying it no mind. Joo-hyuk agreed, knowing the family's reputation for lies was the real reason no one believed them. So, she proposed a chance to clear up this misunderstanding, asking for his help. But he hit her with a firm and expected no.
She pressed on, promising her unwavering support through his graduation if he would just help them this once.
She even offered a recommendation to a guild sponsored by her family, a path that would guarantee his success as a hunter long after school. Joo-hyuk questioned if a simple statement would truly end it all, seeing right through them. They were offering a fortune just for his silence.
They were truly desperate. Adelia Ventrich's expression turned ice-cold at his words.
Joo-hyuk explained his anger wasn't about compensation. They were just trying to bury their mess, and he would never support such a disgrace. He didn't want a reward. He wanted to witness the downfall that Rodale Ventrich had brought upon his own house. Her friendly mask shattered. Pure fury erupted as she hurled insults at him. Her very form began to shift, radiating an intense pressure. How dare he speak to her as if she were some commoner? Joo-hyuk just scoffed. "So the real you finally shows its face." She hissed back that she came to make things easy, only to be met with his unbearable arrogance. In that instant, a murderous intent flared in her eyes. She had tried to be generous, but this boy was throwing it all back in her face. Joo-hyuk taunted her. "Go on, try something," fanning the flames of her rage. He pointed out her hypocrisy, claiming the family had no involvement, while trying to buy his silence, and now threatening to kill him. He openly mocked her power, pushing her closer to the edge. "You can't kill me anyway," he declared, a final provocation that sent her rage boiling over. Adelia Ventrich reverted to her human form, her voice dangerously calm as she invited Kim Joo-hyuk for a talk, promising he would regret every word. He just thought to himself, she's all talk and no bite. Barch suddenly intervened, telling Joo-hyuk he was taking things too far. The two instantly began a telepathic argument. Joo-hyuk told Barch he despised these arrogant fools and knew exactly what Adelia was planning, cursing her name. He then snapped that he was sick of Barch's indifference, too. Joo-hyuk eventually calmed himself, realizing he had no more classes and could just head to the training center early. The scene shifts to the front of the Valhalla Stadium. As Kim Joo-hyuk was walking, scrolling through his phone, he nearly collided with someone, stopping in surprise. It was the sweet girl, Choi Ah-rin, and standing before her was Cho Jin-min, the eldest son of the Chojin family. He was sneering, telling her she could never defeat him, that all her training in Valhalla was useless. He warned her to stay away from the selection test if she wanted to save face, claiming he didn't want to see her humiliated. But her defiant glare told him everything he needed to know. He was stunned by her reaction. He thought he was giving her a merciful way out, but she refused, completely clueless. As Choi Ah-rin opened her mouth to speak, a sharp voice cut through the air. "You're the fool who doesn't get it." Cho Jin-min's face flushed with anger at the sudden insult. It was Kim Joo-hyuk, who couldn't stand by and watch him trample on someone's relentless effort. The boy demanded to know who this nobody was, acting so familiar and throwing insults around. Joo-hyuk stared down the arrogant fool, declaring that he didn't give a damn about his precious rank. He then ordered him to stop harassing students on school grounds and to get lost immediately. Joo Hyuk then turned to Choi Ah-rin, asking if she agreed. She immediately nodded. Yes! Cho Jin-min's face contorted with rage. I'll see you at the test. He spat at the girl before storming away. Choi Ah-rin began to thank Joo Hyuk profusely, but he simply cut her off and told her to get back to her training. But she revealed a shocking truth. When she agreed, she was envisioning a completely different outcome, sparking the protagonist's intense curiosity. She confessed that instead of making him leave, she would have utterly humiliated the boy. A stunned Kim Joo-hyuk could only reprimand her, thinking she'd lost her mind. With their new strategy set, they immediately made their way to the training center, forging a plan as they walked. A few days passed. In the city of Shahung, near a looming mountain, Kim Joo-hyuk ventured deep into a dense, almost impenetrable forest. He navigated the terrain using his phone, searching for a specific location. Brace asked if he was hunting for his lost notes again, and he confirmed it. Even so, Brace was skeptical, pointing out that he had already uncovered several powerful relics. But Kim Joo-hyuk explained that he needed to know just how many of his written notes were still out there. Lost to time. He went on, explaining that the incredible secrets they held were worth any risk. A motive that left Brace utterly bewildered. Kim Joo-hyuk declared that with these notes, he could erase the immense hardships he suffered as Kim Hun-ho. He then chillingly added that if he had met Brace over 300 years ago, he might not have hesitated to kill him, leaving Brace stunned into silence. And now, our scene shifts. We are at the grand estate of the Cho-jin family, swarming with a sea of reporters, paparazzi, and eager onlookers. The crowd buzzed with speculation, discussing the candidates who had gathered for the family's grueling selection test. Suddenly, a powerful figure emerged, silencing the masses. The leader of the Cho-jin group, Cho-jon Saduk, announced the test was about to begin. He repeated his earlier declaration, his voice booming with authority. The winner of this trial would be crowned the true successor, while the loser would be cast out from the Cho-jin family forever. Choi Jon-suk's gaze swept over the candidates. Are you ready? He challenged. Their unified yes echoed with determination as he took a final breath to commence the trial. He then revealed their task to find the legendary double blade, hidden somewhere within these enormous mountains. Whoever could retrieve the artifact and bring it back would be declared the undisputed winner of the selection test. The method did not matter. With a sharp gesture, he gave the command for the battle to begin. Choi Iron's opponent sneered, sprinting ahead with a devious plan. Why rush? He would simply let her find the blade, and then steal the victory right from her hands. His intentions were crystal clear. He would snatch the double blade from the girl at the last possible moment. With that treacherous scheme in motion, we leave the present and return to the past, where Cho Jin-gun was bidding farewell to Choi Irun. He walked away, still reeling from being metaphorically kicked out by Kim Joo-hyuk. In that very moment, his cell phone blared to life. He answered instantly, his voice sharp as he identified himself. A man's voice on the other end cut straight to the point, demanding to know what happened with the double blade. Cho Jin-yoon explained the selection test would complicate and delay everything. The man's patience wore thin. This was the second time the boy had brought up this inconvenient test. Sensing the rising anger, Cho Jin-gun knew he had failed and immediately offered a sincere apology. He then asked desperately if, by some miracle, he managed to secure the double blade. Would the man still honor his promise? The answer came back, cold and absolute. Their agreement was forged before a constellation itself. It was a pact bound by fate and destined to be fulfilled. Because of this, the man gave a simple order focused only on the target. Cho Jin-gun confirmed he understood completely. Back in the present, Choi Jin-gun's eyes burned with resolve. This was his chance, his destiny. He had to find that blade, no matter the cost. Meanwhile, Choi Erin suddenly halted, her mana flowing outwards. There. She could feel the faint magical trace of the double blade, concluding it had to be nearby. She calculated it would take her, at most, another 15 short minutes to reach it. Just as she pinpointed the exact direction, a shadow fell over her. Her rival, Cho Jin-yoon, had arrived at the very same spot, tracking its magical traces. Are we? He sneered. And just who taught you a technique like that? Kim Joo-hyuk, she replied coldly. At that moment, her mind flashed back to her training, to when she first asked him about controlling her magic. He had agreed to teach her, seeing that she already possessed some of the fundamental skills. Kim Joo-hyuk had explained that she'd mastered channeling her magic into lightning. But that was merely the first step. She listened intently, nodding in agreement. He instructed her to practice small, controlled releases of magic, not just the grand, explosive techniques. But she was confused, and asked him how she was supposed to do that. Kim Joo-hyuk was surprised, assuming her own family would have taught her such basic control. A shadow of sadness crossed her face, but the protagonist brushed it aside. He simply asked if she only knew how to borrow power from her constellation and gather raw energy.
She quietly confirmed it was true.
To her surprise, he admitted that he wasn't a natural master of fine control either. Enough talk, he then commanded. Relax your body. Now, from the very tips of your toes and fingers, extend your magic just slightly.
He told her to spread it out slowly, with delicate precision, as if she were guiding the mana to every single strand of her hair model.
In this trance-like state, Choi Aaron's challenge began to perceive the raw magic flowing through the air. Following Kim Joo-huk's guidance, she focused her mind instantly. Suddenly, her entire perception shifted, revealing a world hidden from ordinary sight. Her eyes shot open, a flicker of fear within them. As she took a ragged breath, Kim Joo asked, "You can see it now, can't you?" The young girl nodded, her voice filled with awe, explaining she could see the very shape of the magic enveloping him. He confirmed that this was magic in its rawest form. Even a faint aura, kept close to the body, could be felt with precise mana control.
Kim Joo-hook urged her to channel more power, as it would reveal the magical traces left in the earth and sky. She accepted without hesitation.
He explained that once her own magical aura took on a form similar to his, she would be able to read the history of any object. With enough training, she could even see the clear silhouette of its past wielder. But this was as far as his teaching could go. The rest of her journey, she would have to walk alone.
Understanding his words, she accepted her path. Now, back in the present, her search for the twin-bladed artifact continued.
Cho Jingin sneered. "Who is this Kim Joo-hook?" Recognition dawned, followed by contempt. That shameless, foolish man. He seemed impressed by her talent, yet his words were poison. Choi Aaron's jaw clenched, pure rage igniting in her eyes. She retorted that her master was far stronger than a brat like him. "Why are you even here?" she demanded. Cho Jing-gun just laughed mockingly. His hand moved to his hilt, drawing a blade humming with magic. "This is why," he declared, his intentions clear. "I'm here for a sword battle with you." But as their blades met, he felt something impossible. This girl, who looked so fragile, was overpowering him with ease. He recoiled, breaking the clash to escape her pressure. Then he took a moment, trying to catch his breath. A sliver of disbelief crossed his face. When did this little girl become such a monster? And so, this dramatic chapter comes to a close. We open the next chapter with Kim Joo-hook on his quest. He poured every ounce of his magic into the search for the lost object. But the area was completely barren. He lamented his fate. He had hidden so many treasures. Yet only one had made it to Valhalla. Just then, a blinding light erupted from the earth. A triumphant smile crossed Kim Joo-hook's face. Another of his hidden relics was here. He immediately focused his senses, honing in on its location. The artifact was incredibly close. But from that same direction, a massive explosion rocked the landscape, leaving him bewildered by the chaos. Meanwhile, we return to the clash between Choi Arin and Cho Jin-yoon.
Their battle was a storm of steel and fury, the two fighting relentlessly, their sharp blades singing through the air.
The young girl saw an opening and prepared to unleash a devastating strike against her foe. Without a shred of doubt, she swung her blade with all her strength. The impact sent Cho Jin-gun flying, where he landed hard, gasping for air, visibly shaken. "Did you learn how to fight like a wild boar in Valhalla?" he spat. Admitting her raw physical power was undeniable. "Give up on the twin blade," Choi Aaron commanded. He scoffed in disbelief. "Are you out of your mind? An illegitimate child like you," he sneered, "has no right to this treasure." Her focus sharpened as he charged forward once more.
Her grip tightened on her sword, channeling all her power into it. He closed the distance in a blur, his face a mask of pure rage.
She recalled her training, a swift, rotating maneuver. The time to execute it was now.
As his blade struck the ground, she spun, slashing upwards in a whirlwind of steel. It was a perfect, unhesitating strike, delivered with absolute mastery. A mask of pure agony twisted Cho Jin-gun's face.
He crumbled to the ground, utterly defeated and unable to react. Choi Aaron finally took a deep breath, a wave of relief washing over her. She had hoped to land just one solid blow, but never imagined it would be such a critical hit. Wasting no time, she turned her attention back to the twin blade, but a voice cut through the silence. "You thought you won that easily." Her eyes widened in terror. Cho Jin-gun was back on his feet, fully recovered and radiating pure fury. "I believe," he began, his voice dangerously calm, "that your blessing is a pathetic joke. You can never defeat me with this contract." He explained. "You caught me off guard. I'll give you that much." Choi Aaron's eyes narrowed, sensing the dark magic now swirling around his blade as he transformed into a true villain. She demanded to know why. He just laughed, taunting her. "You don't need to know." His blatant mockery fueled her resolve as she prepared another precise attack. He lunged forward without a thought. She was stunned as he dodged her attack at point-blank range and landed a powerful counterstrike squarely on her. The impact sent her crashing to the ground. She cried out in pain, her face a mask of defeat and shock. He loomed over her, a triumphant sneer on his face. "Are you not getting up?" he mocked. "I'd recommend you just stay down." As she groaned in agony, she felt something strange, a chilling sensation spreading across her small body.
Blood poured from the gaping wound. Chingun sneered, warning her it would be wise to stay down if she valued her life.
She demanded to know who his patron was. Some wicked and malevolent constellation. He revealed that, as the Ginza Guild's leader, he once had an A-level contract. But now, his true allegiance was with the devotees. The name alone stunned her. She had definitely heard that name before. They were the third most dangerous evil organization on the planet, Chien shot back, questioning if the devotees' benefits were truly worth more than a peaceful life. He scoffed at her ignorance, preparing to enlighten her. They offered incredible power, absolute commands, and the authority to sever one's ties to fate itself, leaving Choi Irene utterly speechless. Her mind reeled in confusion. Quinn Gun then confessed he had joined the Ginza Guild at only 12 years old. He'd toiled for the family since he was a boy, an age where he should have been playing. He only stayed because of his father's command, not his own free will. Then, he continued, during his rebellious adolescence, he met a member of the devotees. The man promised he could grant every twisted desire hidden in his heart. Quain Gun mused that the man must have already sensed the darkness within him, a thought that only confused her more. He explained his deepest desire was to shatter fragile humans. But joining the devotees wasn't that simple. First, he had a condition to fulfill, obtain the legendary double sword relic. He sneered that if she had just given up, he would have claimed his prize without a fuss, and she never would have triggered the second test. Hearing this, Choi Aaron's mind went blank. The test. She couldn't remember. Her confusion left him shocked. He reminded her that 10 years ago, the eldest daughter of the Cho Jin family, Cho Ain, took part in the first selection test. The revelation hit her like a thunderclap. In that moment, she understood. Her older sister had vanished during that very evaluation. Cho Jin-gun admitted he couldn't control his dark impulses back then. Before his hunt for the sword began, he had already killed her sister in these mountains. But in the end, he never found the relic. He was left grievously wounded, a complete and utter failure. If not for that, he would have joined the devotees 10 years ago. In a twisted turn of fate, her father found his daughter's body. He secretly institutionalized her, and Cho Jin-gun left her there to rot. But something unexpected happened. Choi Arin desperately asked where her sister was now, but he simply told her to give up. It wasn't the time to go looking. The villain then twisted the knife. Speaking of her mother's complete collapse, "She weeps endlessly," he said, "because every time she looks at Choi Arin, she sees the face of her broken, lost daughter."
With his cruel story finished, Cho Jin-yoon's focus returned to his prize, the double sword.
He readied his final attack. "Send my regards to your dead sister," he snarled, unleashing a devastating blow meant to crush her skull. But suddenly, a deafening clang of steel shattered the air. Cho Jin-gun stared, his eyes wide with disbelief. Standing before him, effortlessly blocking the fatal strike, was Kim Ju.
As the chapter draws to a tense close, our hero calmly asked, "What do you think you're doing?"
"This is a family matter," he spat back. "Stay out of it." The protagonist's eyes went cold. "Pointing a blade at your own sister? Your family is insane." With that, he unleashed a powerful blow. The villain was sent flying, a mask of pure agony on his face. Choyahin, seeing her friend, called out his name, trying to get his attention.
"What are you doing here?" she managed to ask.
Kim Ju-hook had only come to this area to unearth his hidden vault. It was pure coincidence. As his gaze fell upon Choi Aryan clutching her stomach, his eyes widened. He saw the river of blood pouring from the deep wound. He finally answered her. "I had some business here. Now step back and focus your magic on healing that wound." She immediately nodded in agreement. Meanwhile, Chin-gun staggered to his feet. Who is this guy? He wondered. Could it be that rude student from Valhalla? "I told you!" he roared. "This is family business." He charged at the main character, his massive sword held high. He poured every last drop of his magic into the blade, causing it to hum with a sinister purple mana. But just as the sword was about to connect, the impossible happened, leaving Cho Jin-gun utterly stunned. Kim Ju-hook had dodged the attack with absolutely no effort. He then began to lecture him. "Let me teach you how to properly stab someone. You don't aim for a stationary target," he explained. "You predict your opponent's movement, like this." He demonstrated by landing a perfect strike of his own. A raw scream ripped from his throat as crimson sprayed from his lips after the crushing blow. But Kim Ju-hook's assault was relentless. Cho Jin-gun felt himself being hunted, driven back with every crushing step. Then, another devastating strike slammed into his core, shattering what little defense he had left. He was driven into the earth, the ground itself cracking from the impact. The light in his eyes faded, replaced by the hollow look of defeat. Kim Ju-hook stared down at the broken man on the ground. his silence more powerful than any words. He then turned, asking if Orym was all right, to which she quickly nodded. He asked if she could walk as she shakily tried to stand. Suddenly, a sinister purple aura flared to life, capturing our hero's attention. A thick, magical smoke began pouring from Cho Jin-gun's body. At that moment, Brace commented to Kim Ji-hook that it was a magical sword. He agreed, asking if this guy was one of the wicked ones, too. In a stunning move, the villain firmly planted his feet. He shot back up, screaming a furious curse at the main character. He spat that our hero was nothing but a useless freshman from Valhalla. He accused him of underestimating the guild's offensive leader as he prepared a desperate lunge with his sword. But the attack was blocked with ease.
Choi Jin-gun was in disbelief. Not even magic could make him budge. Kim Ji-hook's cold voice cut through the air. Offensive leader, you say?
Did you pick that title just because it sounded good? He taunted, striking him again as he spoke. The leader was sent flying into the distance, his expression one of pure, shattered disbelief. Unable to even answer, he could only wonder at this monster's power. He blocked and counterattacked every move. This kid couldn't possibly be just 17 years old. Choi Jin-gun knew he had to use his trump card. The side effects would be severe, but losing like this was not an option. He decided to use the artificial remnant. With it, he could forge a temporary contract with the constellation itself. Kim Ji-hook watched him silently, his face unreadable as his enemy planned his next move. A wicked, malicious laugh echoed from Cho Jin-gun. He then unleashed the full torrent of magic coiling within his body. Instantly, a violent earthquake shook the entire selection test site, plunging everyone into a state of despair.
At that same moment, a reporter frantically called his contact, exclaiming that he was witnessing something unbelievable. A column of purple smoke was rising high into the sky.
The family leader, watching from afar, wondered what it could be. He realized it was a magical sword, its energy so dense that everyone could see it. What's more, it was right where the twin sword users were fighting. By tradition, he was not to interfere in the selection test, but a danger this great forced him to take action. Meanwhile, back on the battlefield, Kim Ji-hook and Cho Jin-gun were locked in an intense stare down. The main character said he was just observing. Even as the villain's magic surged, Cho Jin-gun just cursed in response, claiming it was merely an extra effect. He explained that all this was just a fraction of the power he gained from his temporary contract, threatening Kim Ji-hook with what was to come. Suddenly, information flooded the world. The all-devouring dragon had recognized this sacred relic. It showed its teeth as if it were deeply satisfied, and activated its ability. The eye that pierces nature. Kim Ji-hook observed it all with a calm and serene expression. Then, without warning, the all-devouring dragon's eye flew wide open. It had caught a timid glimpse of our hero staring right back at it. Instantly, the dragon deactivated its special eye, only to reactivate it a moment later, looking incredibly startled. It was clear that the creature was overcome with terror. It exclaimed that it had to leave immediately, leaving Choi Jin-gun utterly confused. The all-devouring dragon declared that it rejected the call of the sacred relic, thereby ending the contract. It reclaimed all of its power and fled in an instant, abandoning Choi Jin-gun completely. Kim Ji-hook and the others watched as the immense magic simply vanished. The main character then broke the stunned silence between them. He placed the tip of his sword against Cho Jin-gun's stomach, asking who was going to kill whom in this exact moment. After that, he unleashed a powerful strike, sending Choi Jin-gun flying far away. Screaming in agony from the blow to his abdomen, the boy collapsed to the ground, unconscious and utterly defeated. The leader of the devotees, the Dragon King Han Nibble, was stunned by the scene before him. The all-devouring dragon claimed it had gotten into massive trouble because of him. Yelling at the top of its lungs, it asked if he wanted to be erased from this mortal plane entirely. Han Nibble immediately tried to apologize to the constellation, but was promptly slammed headfirst into the ground on his knees. The all-devouring dragon warned him never to distribute any more artificial relics in the future. Han Nibble immediately stammered in agreement. The constellation then warned him to conduct himself properly from now on.
The high priest of the devotees staggered to his feet, his face a mask of agony and utter bewilderment. What was that immense power? Why had his patron constellation erupted in such terrifying fury?
He knew that brat from the Chojin clan had messed something up with the artificial sacred treasure. But the constellation's panicked words, they hinted at something far more terrifying. They hinted at fear. He had to uncover the truth, and fast. Meanwhile, back in the Valhalla dorms, inside Kim Ju-hyuk's room, a wave of profound relief washed over him after the chaotic battle. He eagerly pulled an item from his backpack, clutching his prize with a triumphant grin. This was it. The legendary divine arts. Brace looked on, completely puzzled. So Kim Ju-hyuk explained this was the very reason he'd been hunting for those notes. He called it a revolutionary breathing technique, one designed to explosively increase a person's mana. Brace questioned him about his old methods, but Ju-hyuk scoffed, calling them relics from when he was nothing but a weakling. He revealed he'd discovered these arts 300 years ago, but his body was already set in its ways, unable to adapt. Back then, when he faced Barry, he met his end. His flawed breathing technique drained his mana reserves, leading to a humiliating defeat. But with this new body, he had a second chance. He decided to put his physical training on hold for now. Mastering the divine arts was his absolute top priority. Brace then changed the subject, asking why Juhayak had abandoned Choi Arin with that unconscious fiend. The protagonist simply explained that he had sensed someone approaching. He had to make a swift exit, but assured Brace it would all resolve itself. And now, we rewind to that very moment. As Cho Jin-woon lay sprawled on the ground, out cold, Kim Joo-hook stared down at him, his expression grim and calculating. Brace had immediately asked if he'd finished the villain off, but Joo-hook shook his head. Killing him now, after the Valhalla incident, would be far too risky. Besides, he could still sense a faint trace of mana. The boy would live, a fact that Brace quickly confirmed with relief. Joo-hook turned to Choi Arin, asking if she could stand. She bravely confirmed that she could. But just as he was about to speak, he felt a presence closing in fast. Her family. An interference he couldn't afford if he wanted to secure the notes. The protagonist called out her name, and she answered without hesitation. He told her not to push herself, that her family was almost there. He had urgent business to attend to and had to leave. She understood. Kim Joo-hook gave her one final instruction to take all the credit for defeating the villain herself. He explained that the boy had exhausted his power in that final attack, then bid her farewell. She nodded, promising to see him back at the academy. And with that, his flashback ended. Back in the present, his mind was already racing with new plans. Once he mastered the divine arts, his next target would be the inventory stones. This time, he would absorb their full potential. But for this moment, all he wanted was a brief taste of peace. Elsewhere, at the estate of the Trojan family. The family patriarch presided over a tense meeting around a large table. He grimly announced that the press had been swift. Articles were already spreading like wildfire, and the public had seen the headlines.
One headline painted the Trojan family as a complete and utter joke.
Another suggested that the clan had ties to the devotees. The patriarch seethed with rage, unable to believe a traitor had infiltrated their ranks. To make matters worse, the association had released an official and utterly damning statement for the whole world to see. He recalled a similar scandal hitting the Ventric family. Back then, they could afford to stay silent. But that strategy wouldn't work this time. The leader demanded an update on Choi Arin and confirmed Cho Jin-woon's arrest. He was told the young lady was safe, recovering in the family's private hospital. Her injuries were severe, but the bleeding was controlled. Thankfully, her organs were undamaged, so no surgery would be needed. A wave of immense relief washed over the patriarch at this news. Someone at the table then brought up the articles praising Ms. Arin. The media was hailing her as a hero, a mere student who defeated a devotee. The family leader was perplexed. She had acted against one of their own, and yet the entire world was celebrating her for it. A man at the table expressed his relief. The selection test had devolved into chaos, but at least the next family head was finally decided. He explained that the news articles would undoubtedly solidify Choi Arin's position, especially now that the leader had given his approval. The leader felt it was only right for the young girl to have a legitimate opportunity to flourish, but the fact she defeated Jingun alone stirred a storm of suspicion. And his mind flashed back to that fateful day. He remembered arriving with his assistant, only to find Choi Arin standing before the unconscious form of Cho Jin-gun. She explained how her brother had relentlessly pursued her with dark magic, forcing her to defend herself. The leader demanded to know how she'd done it, as an immense surge of magic had been detected from the mountains. His assistants moved to lift the girl. She answered without hesitation that Kim Joo-hook had taught her. And with that, we returned to the present. The family leader scanned the articles about our protagonist, lost in thought, bringing this intense and mysterious chapter to a close. We open this chapter at the Mega Academy, Valhalla, just as Kim Joo-hook steps into his classroom. But an unexpected sight stopped him dead in his tracks. It was Choi Arin, sitting peacefully in her chair. He thought she'd still be recovering in the hospital, but she looked perfectly fine. Her head then turned, and their eyes met. A small, happy smile graced her lips as she waved shyly. Another boy wondered if that smile was for him, but Kim Joo-hook shattered that fantasy with two quick illusions. Flashing back a little, we see our protagonist reviewing his notes. Suddenly, a familiar notification sound put him on high alert. It was Choi Arin, letting him know she couldn't train for a while, which was no surprise considering how much blood she'd lost. Kim Joo-hook quickly replied that it was fine, as he had his own problems to solve in the coming days. She then spammed him with a barrage of stickers, making him flustered. All at once, Grace materialized. Claiming to have a revelation that piqued his interest, he declared that the dark magic felt disturbingly familiar. Kim Joo-hook questioned his memory, but Grace couldn't recall anything specific. It wasn't that he'd forgotten. It was as if a seal was blocking his mind. Kim Joo-hook theorized that the one responsible was the same entity Grace had mentioned before, and Grace agreed. Grace admitted he wasn't 100% certain, but fulfilling the second condition could theoretically shatter that mental block. The protagonist's mind immediately jumped to the center of the Great Forest. He had assumed it was just a performance evaluation area, but it was also the stage for the final practical exam, where the lowest performers faced immediate expulsion. Kim Joo-hook came to the grim conclusion that he would be forced to wait until the exam period, wasting precious time. Now, returning to the present, our protagonist reaffirmed his decision. He needed time to adapt to his new divine art anyway, so he resolved to investigate the forest's center on his own. Just then, the teacher entered the room, demanding order. He had an announcement to make before class began. He brought up the inter-school competition scheduled for next month, confirming the students already knew about it. Kim Joo-hyuk mulled over the battle. As Brace recalled the teacher mentioning it right after the bi-monthly exam, the instructor explained that the school planned to select the students with the highest final exam scores to participate. Immediately after, he summoned the protagonist to his office, leaving the boy utterly bewildered. We now leave the classroom, shifting scenes to another location within Valhalla. The teacher noted how often they were meeting there, to which Kim Joo-hyuk retorted it was the teacher's own doing. The man conceded the point, but said this time it was about the inter-school competition. Before the teacher could even get to the point, Kim Joo-hyuk flatly declined the offer. Undeterred, the man insisted on explaining the details of the competition one more time. It was a grand event between the three largest hunter training institutions on the planet. Those three titans were Korea's Valhalla, China's White Lotus, and the impressive heroes from the United States of America. Each academy would select its finest first-year students to represent them in a series of brutal challenges, from combat trials to maze escapes. Because of this, Valhalla intended to send its top scorers from the practical exam. Kim Joo-hyuk's expression showed nothing but complete and utter disinterest. The teacher tried to tempt him with rewards, but Kim Joo-hyuk cut him off, stating he had no need for money or fame. The instructor then played his trump card, casually mentioning the Great Forest Center, the very location of the final exam, instantly capturing the boy's attention. He explained that since the final task was being held at Valhalla, it would require entering the heart of the Great Forest, effectively giving the winners a pass on the last exam. Fail this task, and you'd face it again during the final exams. Hearing the stakes, Kim Joo-hyuk simply nodded in acceptance. He then stepped forward, his voice firm, declaring his desire to join the inter-school competition. The scene shifts to the sprawling Ventric estate in the United Kingdom. There, the family matriarch, Adelia, inquires about the status of their grand preparations. She's told everything is on schedule, but will require another month. Unfazed, she simply orders them to continue their work. Her attention then turns to Valhalla, and the movements of the Rockdale Ventric members. She learns that so far, their movements have raised no red flags. But Adelia presses, demanding her subordinate voice any suspicions at all. He agrees, then pivots to a disturbing rumor. Unrelated, yet utterly captivating. Whispers on the street spoke of a bizarre structure, being built entirely out of paper money. The news shocks Adelia to her core, and she quickly learns the likely culprit. Black Cat, an act so brazen, so unusual. She could only wonder what they were plotting. Adelia swiftly activated her tech panel. Seeing the beast mask demanded a full report. Immediately, she summoned Miss Constellation, and with that, the scene fades, taking us to the 7th territory of the market. Amidst the hum of machinery, Black Cat observes from a high vantage point, overseeing the strange project. He would follow any order from the Constellation, without question. But even he couldn't fathom the purpose of a building made of fragile cash. Just then, a figure appeared, revealing the structure was meant to be a gift. The chapter ends on a knife's edge. Black Cat immediately demands to know why he was ordered to build a tower of pure money. The two-faced ruler replies coolly that it was a gift. This sparks immense curiosity in the little black feline, wondering who could possibly deserve such a grand gesture. A name flickered in his mind, but for now, he kept the thought a carefully guarded secret. The ruler then shifted topics, asking if he'd found the boy who sold the rings. Black Cat reported his failure, explaining the seller left no distinct trail to follow. However, the deed's contact information was on record, so a thorough search was underway, scouring every available database. Hearing this, the Constellation urged him to hurry. The feline could only agree, his posture tense with desperation. We leave them behind, the scene shifting to the staff room back at Valhalla. The gray-haired teacher is buried under a mountain of paperwork. Lee Sankla enters, asking if the competition members had been chosen, to which the teacher confirms. Lee then asks to see the list of selected students. He's surprised to find that, aside from Di Young-jin, every participant is from the gray-haired teacher's own class. He's even more shocked to see Kim Joo-hyuk's name on the list. The teacher explains the boy was initially hesitant, until the moment the Great Forest Center was mentioned. Then, everything changed.
Lee Sangla finds this incredibly strange, pointing out that most students
hesitate at the very mention of that place, a sentiment the teacher shared completely. But it was impossible that Ju-yuk didn't know about the center's dangers. Even if he'd slept through every class, that information had been drilled into everyone. Lee Sangla then brought up the Room of Constellations, suspicious of Kim Ju-yuk's true motives for attending their school. He quickly asked for permission to gather the students for training. Receiving an instant approval, the professor immediately arranged a schedule. With their plans set, the two parted ways on friendly professional terms. Thus, their meeting concluded. We now leap forward a few days to the small auditorium at Valhalla. There stood the muscular Oh Se-yuk, the powerful and fearless Yoo So-yoon, and beside them, the cute but deadly Choi Ein, plus Di Young-jin, the outsider. And, of course, our beloved main character, Kim Ju-yuk. Suddenly, the doors opened and Lee Sangla strode into the auditorium where these prodigious students had assembled. His eyes scanned the room, confirming the 5 chosen warriors were present.
With a calm demeanor, he greeted them, introducing himself as their combat instructor for the competition. Lee Sangla explained their purpose there, promising details on their training soon. A trial of 3 parts awaited them.
The first challenge, a one-on-one duel, much like their brutal entrance exam for Valhalla. The second trial would be a team battle, pitting their 5-person squad against students from rival schools. This test was a measure of the leader's adaptability, as all teams would be clashing in a chaotic, simultaneous free-for-all. And the third trial, according to Lee Sangla, would take place at the center of the Great Forest, a name that captured Kim Ju-yuk's full attention.
Because the final exams had been moved up, details were scarce. Lee Angul could only reveal that the center of the Great Forest was a terrifying labyrinth.
Just as its name implied, the place was a dense, treacherous woodland, protected by an incredibly secure gate, designed to block any and all who lacked authorization. All Leon could offer was a single, cryptic detail. Each team would enter the heart of the Great Forest. Their specific instructions would only be revealed on the day itself. The unspoken tension was clear to all.
With little else to say about the location, he moved on, outlining the team battle's format and rules.
He assumed their experience from the dungeon raid meant they understood the basics. But Kim Ju-huk was troubled by the vague explanation. A barrier surrounded the forest. Entering wasn't a simple matter. Something didn't add up. With that, the initial briefing and the main character's doubts concluded. After covering the team battles, Lee Sangla detailed their new training regimen. Before dismissing them, he opened the floor for questions. Only one hand went up Kim Ju-huk's. Given permission, he asked if training alone was an option. Langle simply nodded, stating he could train however he saw fit. He scanned the room for more questions. This time, the cute girl, Cho Rain, raised her hand. She, too, wished to train by herself. Lee Sang found it odd that both Kim Ju-huk and Cho Rain, the top students, wanted to train separately. But he agreed, asking if anyone else felt the same. Silence filled the hall. Lee Sang took that as his cue to wrap up, promising to see them all again at training. With a unified, affirmative response, the students began to rise and file out of the hall. A silent vow formed in Kim Ju-huk's mind. Before the competition, he would master this technique, perfecting his mana and honing his body to its peak. Every spare moment would be poured into his training. As this resolve hardened, a voice called out his name. It was Choi Rin, her expression curious. She asked if joining the official training was truly the right move. He was a bit thrown by her question. She had just declared she would train alone, and had even mentioned not being able to push herself too hard. It all seemed to point one way, but he sensed there was a deeper meaning to her words. Her thoughts drift back to a recent memory. The professor, holding a newspaper, wanting to understand her decision directly. He had asked her, point blank, if she was truly set on participating in the event. Her reply was a question of her own. Will Kim Ju-huk be there? The professor confirmed he would, and with that, her mind was made up. Cho Irene would participate, leaving her professor stunned that she would push her still recovering body. I'll be fine, she had promised, earning his trust. Now, back in the present, the title of family head was within her grasp. But something had changed. Because of Kim Ju-huk, a new purpose had ignited within her. She would grow stronger, not just for herself, but for their team. She would help him reach his goals, just as he had so selflessly helped her. He was a little baffled by her strange pauses, and sudden, determined smile. He simply advised her not to overdo it, and she nodded with fierce resolve. Ju-hook explained the training would be mostly mana control, with physical conditioning limited to simple walks, which she eagerly agreed to. After giving her his advice, he prepared to leave. He told Choi Rin he had to finish some work, but promised he would help her more afterwards. The scene shifts to a place like a prison, under a cold moon in a pitch-black sky. A man with shattered teeth screamed, his voice raw with agony, begging for mercy. He just wanted out of this hell, desperately trying to bribe his captors. One of them, his face a mask of cruel indifference, held a massive, gleaming blade. In a flash, he plunged it into the man's chest, drawing a choked groan and a torrent of blood. The man crumpled to his knees, bound and broken, before collapsing into unconsciousness. A girl named Lisa asked why her partner, Elle, hadn't finished him yet. He replied with a smirk. It was no fun if it ended too quickly. The girl's eyes lit up with excitement. A new mission had just come in. Another chance to prove their worth. A new target to eliminate, the boy asked. Her smile was a sharp, chilling confirmation. On her phone was a photo of their next mark, Kim Joo-hyuk of Valhalla. The chapter ends with a death sentence hanging over our hero's head. Their current victim lay bleeding out, a knife still buried in his chest. As one of them casually pulled the blade free, they began to talk. Nandal questioned why they would take a job to kill some nobody student from an academy. Lisa figured the client must have paid an astronomical sum. The deadline was 1 month. The target had to be eliminated during the inter-academy competition. Nandal wondered why they couldn't just get it over with now. But she explained the academy's security was too tight. Breaching the barrier was next to impossible. He argued that security would be even heavier during the competition, with all the other schools present, a concern Lisa had already heard and dismissed. Word spread about the third day's task, a mysterious maze hidden deep in the Great Forest's center. Lisa also discovered their objective was simple for the students to cross it. Nandal couldn't help but wonder if any instructors would be inside. She explained they'd be alone, save for a drone and a few guards at the entrance, while teachers watched from a safe distance. Their plan was to hide after Aaliyah's initial infiltration, an idea Nandal found incredibly dull. Lisa reminded him that completing the mission was all that mattered, and he finally agreed. 1 month later, the inter-school competition began. A wave of excitement pulsed through the student body as the event kicked off. But Rockdell Ventrick observed it all in cold, calculating silence. His mind drifted back in time, to a fateful call with his father. He confirmed the money for Eden Ventrick had been received, which his father acknowledged with satisfaction. He then revealed what the money was for a divine contract placed on Kim Joo-hyuk's head, a kill order for the legendary Il Shinjo. His father was stunned by the news, but Rockdell calmly explained that no evidence could ever link them to this dark deed. Regardless, he would make certain of it, as the Samolu Shin group had already accepted the deadly commission. Eden Ventrick knew of that senior assassin guild, 3 shadows working as one to form an unstoppable force. Because of this immense risk, his father begged him not to draw any attention. Rockdell agreed. Back in the present, Rockdell smirked. Ilshin had already sent confirmation. Kim Joo-hyuk would be dealt with during the competition. With that settled, there was no need for him to sit and watch. He immediately called his assistant, Julia, preparing to leave. Just then, a man in black materialized on the podium, his voice booming over the crowd. It was Shim Dakin, the formidable president of Valhalla's council. Before the games could truly begin, he wished to introduce the representatives from each academy. He started with White Lotus from China, then the heroes from the United States, and finally, the exceptional students of Valhalla, representing South Korea. Shim Dakin announced the competition would span 3 days, and the first day's event would be individual duels between the students. He requested that each school's representatives return to their waiting rooms and prepare for the battle roster reveal. As the students began to move, Lee Sang-chil observed the crowd with a sharp, silent focus. Suddenly, a deep, familiar voice called out his name. It was the senior hero instructor, Jack Rover, greeting him for the first time in ages. Lee Sang-chil shot back a joke, calling him third place, a nickname that instantly enraged Jack. After all, he knew Valhalla had failed to secure the top spot. Jack Rover declared that this year would be different. The heroes would undoubtedly claim the #1 position, but Lee Sang-chil merely questioned his confidence. However, Cho Jong had made it clear that killing was strictly forbidden. He then brought up the pinnacle of all contractors, someone Valhalla's senior director knew all too well. That legendary individual was known only as the Destroyer, and his real name was Logan. Jack Rover's eyes gleamed as he revealed the son of this legendary contractor was now a member of the heroes, leaving the senior director speechless. The boy was their representative, standing among them right now. His name was Logan Jr., son of the Destroyer. Lee Sang-chil admitted he was eager to see the boy's potential, only to be hit with another bombshell. Logan Jr. had already forged a contract with his father's own constellation, a pact with the Destroyer of everything. It meant the boy likely wielded the same cataclysmic power, though Jack admitted the father's mastery was still superior. Jack also pointed out that Valhalla wasn't the only one with questions about Kim Joo-hyuk. He'd heard a rumor that the boy had single-handedly defeated and captured a villain, a fact Lee Sang-chil confirmed with a knowing look. Jack Rover grinned, suggesting Kim Joo-hyuk would be a perfect match for Logan Jr. After all, they were both prodigies capable of defeating seasoned adults. Lee Sang-chil's response was strangely non-committal. At that moment, the announcer's voice echoed through the stadium. The first-round matchups had been decided. The senior instructor simply said his friend would soon understand his calm reaction. the moment he witnessed the fight. The scene shifts. Kim Joo-hook now stands in the arena, facing his first opponent. Shim Jae-kun explains the simple rules, which apply to all matches. The first person to secure a win is declared the victor. Even if a weapon strikes a vital point, the stadium's system will neutralize the damage, sending electric pulses to simulate the searing pain for the target. This powerful protection system would remain active until the next round. After the final countdown, the battles would commence. Kim Joo-hyuk listened to the announcer and wondered about the methods they were using. Brace explained it was a precaution, to ensure he was fit to fight through the first and second days. The countdown was already in its final tense seconds. It ticked down to the last moment. When the starting signal flared, Kim Joo-hyuk exploded towards his target. But then, he felt an unexpected resistance. His powerful strike had been completely blocked by his opponent. The opponent mocked Kim Joo-hyuk's apparent lack of power, and with that, the stage was set for a truly epic battle. Kim Joo-hyuk simply replied that he didn't consider himself strong, but that he was walking a much longer road. The boy shot back, surprised by his enemy's modesty. But for Kim Joo-hyuk, his opponent's personality meant nothing. He was still evolving. In the heat of battle, he challenged his foe. How much longer can you withstand these blows? In that moment, the boy stood completely still, a wave of fear washing over him. With no mercy in his eyes, Kim Joo-hyuk prepared his next strike. He delivered an overwhelmingly powerful blow to the boy's frail body. His opponent's knees buckled as he gasped for air, commenting on the sheer weight of that single punch. Kim Joo-hyuk noted that the boy was tougher than he looked. He'd hoped to end it in one hit. From above, the senior instructors watched intently. Lee Sang-shiel commented that the boy was indeed a powerhouse. Jack Rover replied that he'd seen Kim Joo-hyuk fight before, but there was a catch. Back then, he lacked this intimidating presence. Still, Jack Rover held onto his hope. The battle wasn't over yet, and Logan Jr. had yet to unleash his destructive power. Logan Jr. was already gathering his magical energy for an attack. Kim Joo-hyuk observed him, his expression a mask of calm. The attack screamed closer and closer to his head, close enough to sever a few strands of his hair. Kim Joo-hyuk's senses screamed with danger as he realized the magic's potency. He immediately launched a counterattack against his overconfident opponent. Afterwards, Kim Joo-hyuk noticed the missing lock of hair, realizing this was no ordinary magic, but some kind of destruction ability. Meanwhile, Logan Jr. felt like he was about to lose consciousness after taking only 2 hits to his stomach. He thought that if he couldn't perfect the destruction skill, there was no reason to use it. But he quickly abandoned that thought. He still had one more option he could use. Suddenly, he slammed his hands on the ground, absorbing a massive amount of magic. The pressure was so immense, the ground began to crack and splinter. Kim Joo-hyuk wondered what this new technique could be, and why the boy was destroying the arena floor. And then, the plan was set in motion. With a mighty stomp, all the shattered concrete began to levitate into the air. Logan Jr. thought that if Kim Joo-hyuk could dodge attacks he could see, then the key to victory was to strike from his blind spots. But our main character was locked in, his eyes blazing with intense focus on the battle. Suddenly, Logan Jr. froze. He realized Kim Joo-hyuk had found him. At that moment, it was already too late to retreat. His only choice was to push forward with his attack. His decision was a fatal error. Out of nowhere, a slab of concrete smashed directly into his forehead. Kim Joo-hyuk calmly revealed he'd seen him hiding behind the floating debris, adding that it would have been even easier to find him if he'd been using magic. Then, our hero landed a final, powerful punch directly to his opponent's face. The blow sent him flying across the arena until he slammed into the wall with a sickening impact. The announcer's voice boomed, declaring the round over the winner. Kim Joo-hyuk from Valhalla Academy. Lee Sang-shiel nodded, understanding the reason for his calm demeanor, while Jack Rover was left utterly speechless. He finally managed to say, "That boy is a true prodigy monster." In the next round, Kim Joo-hyuk faced Lion Pong from White Lotus, claiming an effortless victory. After that, his next opponent, Lee Bella from the Heroes, also lost easily. Finally, the time came for the individual duel against the sweet Choi Ain. She remarked that they had reached the final round, meaning Valhalla's overall victory was basically guaranteed. The battle was only to establish the final rankings. She asked if she should just forfeit, since the winner would receive the scholarship and she didn't care much for the prize. Kim Joo-hyuk felt the same, but told her not to give up, because it would be disrespectful not to demonstrate their skills. He also told Choi Ain to show him how much she had improved. Then Kim Joo-hyuk commanded her to attack, promising to be mindful of her injury. The girl's eyes lit up as she immediately agreed, preparing to strike. She gripped her sword tightly and charged her friend and trainer. He, too, was eager for the battle. But after the fight, the announcer was stunned and tense. Jack Rover and Lee Sang-shiel were also completely shocked by what they had just witnessed. The students from Valhalla watched in silent awe. Kim Joo-hook had just delivered a devastating blow to Choi Ein, who now lay defeated on the ground. With a booming voice, the announcer declared Kim Joo the winner of that year's individual duels. But inside his mind, Brace seethed. "You were cruel. You promised to go easy," he simply replied. "I did hold back. I didn't strike her abdomen." Kim Joo-hyuk explained that forcing her to fall face first was pure improvisation, a move that left his mental adversary completely baffled. He continued, revealing that the girl's sword trajectory had suddenly tilted directly toward his stomach, so he had no choice but to force it downward. His logic was flawless. At that moment, Kim Joo-hyuk felt it. He had grown immensely stronger. He marveled at his evolved mana, realizing he could now keep a portion of it in reserve. But he noticed something else, too. Choi Ein had also improved significantly. And so, this chapter of the intense trial came to a close. Now, under the brilliant moon in the dark sky, his own time began. Instructor Lee In-gyul appeared, congratulating the Valhalla team on their performance. He then asked if everyone was all right, and they all responded that they were fine. The instructor explained that the Academy's protection system had prevented any serious harm, though he advised them to check themselves thoroughly for any hidden scratches. He also announced that he would provide more details about the next day's formation shortly. But Kim Joo-hyuk felt that every moment spent waiting to go to the Great Forest Center was a complete waste of time. Lee Sang-kul then dismissed the team, ordering them to get some rest. As he turned to leave, his duty done for the night as suddenly, a voice called out to him from the shadows. It was the powerful prodigy, Kim Joo-hyuk. The instructor asked if the boy had a question, and he confirmed it. His question was about the group battle scheduled for the next day. Kim Joo-hyuk wanted to know if, upon clearing the test, he could advance straight to the final trial in the Great Forest Center. Lee Sang-kul paused, intrigued. "A case like this has never happened before," he said. "I'll need to check the official rulebook." He quickly found what he was looking for, informing Kim Joo-hyuk that 2 clauses existed that would certainly pique his interest. "The committee assigns only 1 basic trial per day," the instructor explained. "But there are exceptions." He began to recite the 2 rules to the boy. The first concerned finishing the task well before the allotted time, while the second involved having the appropriate battle conditions. Kim Joo's eyes sharpened as he asked about his professor's specific criteria. He pressed further. "If I complete everything perfectly, am I permitted to move on to the next trial?" Lee Sang-kul confirmed that if he finished early and reported to the teacher's room, he could start the challenge that very afternoon. Kim Joo simply nodded. "I'll see you tomorrow." And on that beautiful dark night, the 2 parted ways. Brace's voice echoed in the protagonist's mind. "So that's your plan." Joo-hyuk confirmed that it was a relief to know the path forward. The strange man seemed to understand. He guessed that Kim Joo-hyuk was planning to utterly eliminate the students from the other academies. But Kim Joo-hyuk just called him an idiot. "I'm talking about the first trial," he explained. "Not the second." Brace fell silent, realizing his mistake. The protagonist had only one thought consuming him now. He had no more time to waste. The scene shifts to the next day, in the area surrounding Valhalla known as Yasin. The announcer's voice boomed across the landscape, expressing his excitement to reveal the second trial of the inter-school competition. That day's main event would be a group battle, where 5 representatives from each academy would clash deep within the mountains. The terrain itself presented a daunting challenge. A massive megadrone with a powerful camera would broadcast the entire trial. All the students from Valhalla were already gathered, preparing for the signal to start. The girl with the tiara wondered where Kim Joo-hyuk could be, as the trial was about to begin. Suddenly, he appeared, offering a casual apology for being late. The girl was furious about his timing, but the protagonist simply claimed that he hadn't heard his alarm. She retorted that he should have been there 30 minutes earlier, just as the professor instructed, but then admitted she had been distracted at the time. Kim Joo-hyuk's patience began to wear thin. He had already apologized, so why was she still scolding him? He cut her off with a stunning declaration. "I'll handle everything." The words left her completely speechless. She doubted he even understood what he was saying. "This is a group battle," she reminded him, but he calmly insisted that he knew. The girl continued to lecture him, pointing out that his victory in the duel meant nothing here. "Other teams will gang up on us," she warned. "Going in alone is foolish." She then turned to the rest of the group, asking if anyone else had complaints. At that moment, Choi Erin stepped forward, asking to speak. The girl with the tiara suspected she already knew what the cute girl was about to say. But instead of complaining, Choi Erin simply asked to accompany Kim Joo-hyuk. He gave a flat refusal, which left the tiara girl absolutely furious. The protagonist then looked at the girl with the tiara and told her to stop chattering, leaving her utterly confused. He explained plainly, "I have another game to participate in this afternoon." As the countdown for the trial began, the girl's confusion morphed into pure rage over his cryptic words. Kim Joo-hyuk didn't bother to reply, simply calling her a chatterbox. With only 3 seconds left, words were meaningless. His focus was already on the heart of the Great Forest. And with that, the trial began. Team White Lotus standing in perfect battle formation. But their preparation was shattered by a shadow emerging from the trees. The protagonist had found them. The group leader's face went pale. It was the boy from Valhalla, and he was demanding if they were ready. Kim Joo-hyuk scoffed, sarcastically impressed by their reaction time. In the blink of an eye, the entire White Lotus team was annihilated, leaving Logan Jr. standing there in stunned silence. Not even 10 minutes into the game, his whole team was already out. Logan Jr. realized those cursed Valhalla students must have launched a blitz attack, taking out White Lotus before they could even become a threat. Suddenly, a teammate's urgent voice cut through the air, reporting a magic signature from a specific direction. Logan Jr. instantly demanded, "Is it the Valhalla group?" The response sent a chill down his spine. It wasn't a group. It was a single person. "Luke, Dean, maintain the magic shield," he commanded. "Melissa, prepare enhancement magic." They all complied without hesitation. Debella was ordered to reinforce their shield, a task she was already performing with fierce concentration. An immense power began to radiate from the group. Still, Melissa questioned the need for such a massive defense against a lone enemy. Logan Jr.'s voice was grave. "Against the likes of Kim Joo-hyuk," he said. "We will definitely need it." Debella added that Melissa had never fought him before, and had no idea how monstrous a high schooler's skills could be. The blonde girl shot back that her friend hadn't faced him either, but Logan Jr. cut her off. "There's no comparison," he stated flatly. "Don't put me in the same league as him." Just then, the boy in white robes shouted that the magic signature had vanished without a trace. One member wondered if he had retreated after scouting them out. But they didn't lower their guard, preparing for a potential surprise attack. Every member was on high alert, channeling all of their power into their defenses. Then, a shadow flickered above them. Logan Jr.'s eyes widened in horror as he realized Kim Joo-hyuk was right on top of them. Faster than sight, a blade descended from the heavens. The boy from Valhalla brought his sword down in one powerful, decisive blow. Logan Jr. didn't even have time to register the attack before he collapsed, completely defeated and unconscious. The young girl watched in horror, but it was too late. Kim Joo-hyuk was already moving on her, his attack just as swift and brutal. The blonde girl screamed his name, preparing a desperate counterattack. He glanced at the yellow orb flying his way and struck her down instantly. A foolish move. She should never have revealed her magic circle. From behind, 2 more of Logan's team charged in, hoping to land a blow with their bare fists. But Kim Joo-hyuk was more than ready, his grip tightening on his razor-sharp sword. With a single, fluid strike, he sent them both crashing to the ground without a moment's hesitation. The would-be heroes were left writhing in agony. Kim Joo-hyuk had effortlessly dismantled the entire team using nothing but pure strategy. Without a second thought for the fallen, his mind was already on his next destination, the center of the Great Forest. Back in Valhalla's grand monitoring room, the announcer stared in disbelief, wondering how it all ended so quickly. Kim Joo-hyuk had crushed his opponents in under 23 minutes, most of which was spent simply scouting the terrain. According to the man with the mustache, this completely wrecked the day's schedule, creating a massive problem. But Lee calmly pointed out a specific rule if enough time remained. They could proceed to the next trial immediately. The next test was set in the same Great Forest. Valhalla's assistant chief asked for permission to coordinate with the other instructors to proceed. The competition coordinator agreed, requesting they inform him of the final decision, which they promised to do. Lee reflected on how fearsome and cunning Kim Joo-hyuk truly was. He must have known about this rule and planned this exact outcome. With that, he and his close friend, Jack Rover, began to head out. The leader of the heroes had already agreed to proceed, but noted they still had to consult with the White Lotus instructors. After watching that one-sided massacre, he was convinced. Postponing the test would change nothing. The outcome was already set in stone. Now, he finally understood why his friend had called Kim Joo-hyuk a true warrior, a monster in human form. Lee's friend could only nod, acknowledging the truth in those words. The two of them then decided their first stop would be to speak with the leaders of the White Lotus group. The scene then shifts, moving to Valhalla's rest area. The rebellious girl wrestled with her new role as leader, but in the end, her position had been all for show. Worse, she'd suffered a crushing defeat against Choi Aaron, all because her rival had trained with the one and only Kim Joo-hyuk. At this rate, she'd be left in the dust, and a fire of resolve ignited within her she refused to lose. She considered swallowing her pride, to beg Kim Joo-hyuk to teach her his legendary techniques. When suddenly, a voice cut through the air, a summons for all student representatives. The Labyrinth survival test, meant for tomorrow, was suddenly moved. It would happen that very afternoon, at exactly 1 p. Sharp, there would be no delays. A chill ran down Choi Aaron's spine. Kim Joo-hyuk had predicted this exact turn of events. As the other teams scrambled to prepare for the final evaluation, our protagonist stood up, an important announcement on his lips. He declared he was going solo, straight into the heart of the Great Forest. The rest of the team would have to fend for themselves, But he offered a lifeline column if they faced true danger. The girl was left stunned by this prodigy's self-imposed trial. Her mind raced. They'd already conquered the first 2 trials with ease.
All they had to do was avoid coming in last on this final test.
The labyrinth challenge was less about monsters, and more about surviving the brutal, unforgiving environment itself.
Even Kim Joo-hyuk seemed slightly baffled by his own bold move, as the girl beside him earned a new, fitting nickname.
And so, the tense preparations ended. The scene shifts to the imposing gates of the labyrinth, deep within the dreaded forest. The announcer's voice boomed across the field. The final trial of the competition had officially begun, survival in the labyrinth. Just as before, the stage was set for the world to see, with the entire ordeal broadcast live on a massive holographic screen. Before they entered, the commander delivered a solemn warning, outlining the trial's brutal conditions and the criteria for victory. The arena for this final battle was the center of the Great Forest, a land overshadowed by colossal, ancient trees. Hidden within was a labyrinth unlike any other, a place of perpetual rain where only low-level threats and weak monsters roamed. The true enemies were the relentless downpour and the suffocating jungle. This test wasn't a measure of power, but a raw test of one's will to survive. Once the students entered, their condition would be monitored. After 5 hours, those who endured the best would win. But one rule was absolute conflict between groups was forbidden. But just as the students braced themselves, the story cuts away to an abandoned warehouse, a secret base for Valhalla. A figure appeared from the shadows, confirming to the sentries that the students had entered the forest. It was Shinjo Samsula, responding to the report. A powerful magic barrier was blocking their path to the labyrinth's main gate, a spell actively maintained by 2 individuals. The group's leader gave the order. They would have to eliminate the guardians of the gate first. Instantly, a shimmering purple portal tore open reality. The trio stepped through and vanished, and at that exact moment, every monitor monitoring the trial went dark. Lee Sang-yeol stared at the flickering screens in disbelief. What in the world was going on? Every camera in the forest center had failed at once. This meant the students were now trapped inside, blind and utterly vulnerable. With grim determination, the instructors decided to intervene. At the master's command, they all charged toward the trial grounds. Lee Sang-yeol arrived first, gasping for breath, only to freeze in horror at the scene before him. The entire area was a wasteland of absolute destruction, a collapsing ruin that spoke of a battle beyond imagination. What truly happened in that forest? And more importantly, is anyone still alive?
If you think they survived, let us know in the comments. We'll see you here tomorrow for another heart-pounding manhwa recap.